Hello again, friends, and you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru right here, wherever it is that you have pulled up to on this beautiful Tuesday. Not Monday, but Tuesday this week. Hope everyone who celebrates Yom Kippur had an easy fast. I am your host, the great Brian Last. I'll be reading your questions to the man who will be answering those questions and even doing a watch-along again this week. He is the leader of the cult of Cornette, the exalted one, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Well, now you're just putting on airs, Brian Last. You got all the way through that without fumble fucking around, is what you did. You got all the way through it. You're just putting, because you have just imparted to me before we went on the air that you were verklempt. You needed more time. You delayed broadcasting or recording at least 20 minutes while you were gathering your thoughts. You're going to fly by the seat of your pants. And I maybe when I was fat, the seat of my pants may have made a nice fucking, glider or parachute or whatever. I don't know about your pants. And now you just ease into it and don't let on to the people that you're verklempt and bumfuzzled here.
How many times on TV have you been depantsed or had your pants ripped?
Well, now we've just taken a left turn. Okay, hold on. The first time that I exposed my ass in front of a large group of people was at the Louisville Gardens. I'd been in the business 7-8 months, I guess, at that point, because I was managing the Galaxians, Danny Davis and Ken Wayne. And it's a preliminary match with Cowboy Jim Dalton and whoever his partner may have been. I can't remember, because he had just come into territory, and I'd seen Jim Dalton when I was a fan 10 years beforehand, right? But he had a new gimmick. Cowboy Jim Dalton he had a cowboy hat, obviously. He had the chaps, he had the whole thing, and he also came to the ring with a 6-shooter and a holster on his belt, which, okay, that completes the cowboy image, but neither me nor my team were advised of the fact that when he was introduced, Cowboy Jim Dalton, he was going to pull the pistol and fire legitimate blanks up in the air, which I don't know whether that would go over in today's environment in the middle of a sports arena in front of about 3,000 or 4,000 people. But I wasn't looking at the time, and I had turned my back to look at Danny and Ken, and he fired the goddamn gun, and I didn't really shit myself, thankfully, because it would have come out, because as I dove out through the ropes to hit the floor to get away from what I thought was people shooting at us, this is how I learned to get Sansa belts. This is before I exclusively wore those stretchable Sansa belts. I had on a regular pair of suit pants, and I went through the ropes and down to the floor and dropped down below the apron, and then everybody started laughing, and that's when Danny and Ken jumped down and said, "Hey, you've split your pants from asshole to appetite." Because as I got down to cover my head, I was bent over and they could see me. Thankfully, I was wearing underwear, but they could see that my pants were severely compromised. A wardrobe malfunction, if you will. And then, let's see, there was the time in...
Terry Funk on TV.
Well, Terry Funk on live TV in Memphis in front of 300,000 people without asking if I was wearing underwear, but I think they probably knew I was. And then there was a time, we've told that story before, but the only reason I was there, I was managing Jesse Barr, and Funk came in the territory for the first time since his program with Lawler as a babyface to team with Lawler and Coco Ware on Super Bowl Sunday against Jimmy Hart's crew of heels, Bobby Eaton and Sabu, the Wild Man, not Sabu, current Sabu, but Coco Samoa, and somebody else, regardless. So they got Terry in the studio on Memphis TV on Saturday morning to do promos and plug the match, and they put him in a 6-man tag, Lawler, Coco, and Terry Funk against the Marauders, who were Robert Reed, I think, and good Lord, some other poor soul. and Jesse Barr. And Jesse thought they were trying to job him out of the territory, teaming him up with job guys. They just wanted me across from Terry Funk because they knew what a mark I was for him. And they were going to rib me by ripping my pants off. So he chases me around, and finally, as I'm diving in the ring, and you can see the footage, which was available out there in the YouTube archives, I think.
Isn't it on the early years DVD set?
It's on the early years DVD, but I didn't want to plug that as I started thinking about it because I don't sell them anymore because it takes too much time to assemble everything. But anyway, so Jesse's trying to pull me in the ring by my hands, and I'm freaking out. I'm panicking because Funk's got a hold of me. And with him, you couldn't fucking tell because absolutely none of this was called. The sum total of the instruction we got for the finish was they'll take it on one of the Marauders in about 5 minutes. And it go. That was it, right? So Jesse's pulling me in, and Funk's got me, and he did what the Funk family, what a lot of the old timers did in the old days when a mark hit the ring. You pantsed him, because even if the guy's coming in ready to fight, if all of a sudden his pants get ripped off and he's standing there in front of thousands of people in his underwear, it takes the, fucking aggravation out of him, and he wants to just get out of there. So the old timers knew ways, I've seen them do it, to just stick their hands in your pants pockets and jerk in such a way, in such a direction of spreading out whatever the fuck that your pants come off. So Terry gets my pockets, and he ripped one whole side of my pants off. I'm fighting to get away, and Jesse's trying to pull me. And of course, now these are the only pants I have at the studio that day. So after I get chased out, and then it was chaos in the match, and they beat one of the Marauders, and Jesse just wandering around thinking that they were trying to get rid of him. I got to come back out and cut a promo for the match that we had, me and Adrian and Linda against Dundee and Calhoun or whoever, in Memphis that Monday night. And so I had to go back and duct tape my pants back together so that I could go out on TV. And the opening shot is Adrian and Linda commiserating as I'm looking at all my pants taped up together when they come back on the air. And the first thing I say, by the way, I screamed, "Funk!" But a lot of the people thought that I said, "fuck," because I was so upset. So there was controversy over that one. There was a time, talking about pants ripping, what town? It was someplace in like northern Mississippi, or it was a spot show. It was an old building in an old town in front of very few people in the summer of 83. And spring of 83, I was the heel manager there. Basically, Lawler had booked himself and probably Coco against the Moondogs in the main event of this 4-match card in this little town, because it was only 50 miles from Memphis, and all those guys lived there in Memphis. And probably on a Saturday night when everybody else was in Nashville, because Lawler just didn't want to go to Nashville on Saturday night and then come all the way back home. So the big show's in Nashville, and I'm the heel manager, Jimmy Hart's second in command of the First Family. So I'm with the Moondogs and probably every other heel, such as they were on the rest of the show. And Larry Latham tries to get over no matter where he is, right? He's just that kind of guy. So he's doing the whole full-fledged Moondog thing. Lawler had worn his crown out to ringside and set it on the announce table, right? And the guy from the VFW is the ring announcer. He's going to guard it with his life. No fans are going to get that crown, right? But he didn't think about the Moondogs, because Larry's down on his hands and knees. He's crawling around. He's acting like a moondog, and he looks out at the crown like a big fucking bone, and he reaches out to grab the crown like he's going to start working, chewing on it. But he didn't realize how fucking flimsy Lawler's, at least his spot show crown was. He grabs that thing, and it just collapses inward on the top. And the fucking fake jewels, the emeralds and the rubies and the diamonds pop out everywhere, right? And skitter off like fucking Skittles around ringside in this old building in this old town in northern Mississippi with 125 people in it. And 60 of those people are under 14, and all those kids think that those jewels are going to fucking, they're going to get Hawaiian mansions and retire on. It's diamonds. And they start diving around. It just disrupts the whole fucking match. The kids are diving under the front row and under the ring trying to get the jewels. The crown is a goddamn misshapen mess in the spot the Moondog's hand. And fucking, I hear Lawler make that noise he'd make when he gets mad. Just kind of like a, eh. And I'm like, oh, shit. And because you can always tell when Lawler's mad, in the ring, you could hear it. It cut through the fucking crowds of thousands of people. If he got potatoed or something went, eh. And so anyway, I've jumped up on the apron of the ring because all the kids, scurrying around ringside trying to get these fucking jewels. And Lawler looks over at me and says, that's going to come out of your check. I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't fucking do anything, right? So then, goddamn, later on in the finish of the match, the whole thing is they're supposed to jerk me into the Moondogs, get beat, I fuck up, whatever the fuck. And Lawler grabbed one side and Coco grabbed the other side, and they ripped my pants in half and ripped my pants off. When the pants cost back then $30, plus I was in Mississippi and I still lived in Louisville. So or at least Nashville, if I hadn't moved at that point. It cost me almost that much that I was going to get paid, which was $50 to get there to begin with. And I just lost a $30 pair of pants. That was another time I got my pants ripped off in public.
Hey, real quick, before we get back to this stirring discussion.
Are we doing a show?
This is great stuff.
Okay, all right. Oh, it's great stuff. How have you always wanted to get in my pants?
How many?
My pants.
Will you stop it? Be serious for a second here. How many crowns did Lawler have?
Oh, over.
Because you mentioned a house show crown. I mean, were there different classes of crown? What did he typically have in rotation?
No, there were definitely spot show crowns because he had a number of crowns at any one time. And if something was, getting some wear and tear on it or scuffed up or missing a fucking jewel or two, it was probably going to go to the, high school in Covington, Tennessee. A real good one would be for TV or Monday night at the Coliseum. And he stuck, especially in the early years, with the same style that the one that Bobby Shane gave him, the classic King's crown. But then as the gimmick got over and as everybody knew him as that, not only would he see others and go out and get them, but people would make things, and he branched out with a number of different styles. And then he started using the flat one for commentary in the WWF in the 90s when he was at the commentary table, because that crown is a distracting motherfucker when you're wearing a giant full King's crown. But there was a number of different styles. And yeah, you got a spot show suit, you got a spot show crown, whatever your gimmick is, you've got more than one of them, because you take the beat up shit to the spot shows and you take the good shit to the big towns. Hence the term spot show dick. Every time somebody would see Bobby Eaton in the shower, he'd look at him, he'd say, hey, come on now, this is just my spot show dick. But anyway, how many more times would you like to talk about when I've had my clothes ripped off of me in public?
Well, I mean, we haven't even gotten to Mid-South yet, but I will say the reason I thought about this was you brought up pants at the top, but also I just saw a video. Someone posted it, maybe on the Mothership group. It was you doing a sit-down segment when you went to the Hall of Fame, and they were showing you a clip of, I guess, the Mexican minis took your pants and locked you out in New York City on the street with no pants.
No, the Mexican minis pantsed me, and then I ran out the no return entrance door. That was...
You were banging on car windows.
Well, I was trying to make something out of it. Here was the fucking deal. It was Shotgun Saturday Night, right? Remember this concept. Do we have to go over this? Vince's original concept, when he was doing Monday Night Raw, it was supposed to be a takeoff on, because I think that originally when Jerry Jarrett was up there, they had talked about the concept. But a live show like Memphis wrestling, like the old days where anything could happen. And then, of course, by 97 or 98, it turned into the slickest fucking show that they produced. So then he wants another fucking live show where anything could happen. And there comes Shotgun Saturday Night. And he originally, and I think this lasted for the first 6 or 8 weeks, they wanted to tape in nightclubs in New York City and in Manhattan, as they say. Webster Hall was one. That's your fucking neck of the woods. You know these places. But the whole thing was to be, and of course, since Russo was around at that point, they had to have some kind of scantily clad woman in a cage at some point. That they did that the first couple of weeks, did they not? I'm trying to put it out of my mind. Did they have the dancing or anyway? Nevertheless,
sounds right. Yeah,
sounds like something they'd have done anyway. So part of it was supposed to be, chaos. Part of it was supposed to be wrestling. Part of it was supposed to be in New York City, because in Vince's mind, everybody's interested in something that comes from New York, regardless of whether it's good or not. So on one of the episodes of the early weeks, as a matter of fact, this was the same episode I've told the story where Jake Roberts was supposed to be at the production meeting because he was on the creative team at that point. And we were all supposed to get there at noon, and he got there promptly at 9:30 that night. This was the same night. Vince is working with Antonio Pena, and he's got access to the lucha talent and Pena's minis, the Mexican minis. And so for whatever reason, I guess maybe I had the reputation of being a comedic genius much as I do now, because I had to be the one to try to fucking pull off Vince's specious and actually, in most cases, unfunny material that he was trying to make the Mexican minis funny over. Remember, we actually went into the bathroom at the bus station in fucking New York with a camera crew. I'm surprised, if we'd had Gold Dust, they'd have known exactly why we were there. But I had Mini Vader, the Mexican Mini, who was dressed like Vader in his Vader outfit that I was supposed to have imported from Mexico on a fucking Greyhound bus. And when he gets off, Vince McMahon thinks it's going to be the most hilarious thing in the world. If the Mini has to piss, and so I take him like somehow, even he's like mentally 6 years old. He's not allowed to, even though he's an adult man, he's not allowed to go in the bathroom by himself. I have to take him in the bathroom in a foreign country, and now Vince's sight gag is going to be that the Mini is so short he can't get up to piss in the urinal. But we go in the fucking bathroom, and the urinals are about 6 inches off the ground in this place. Anybody, a baby, I'm saying a baby could pith in this place. A baby could piss in this place. So I'm still doing the gag and trying to hold so that the announcers can cover it, right? Because Vince is producing this on the spot in the bathroom. So then I guess the very next, sometime in that same general trip when they were all in, Mini Vader has a match with Mini, whoever the fuck the other Mini was. And the deal is I'm supposed to get mad, and when I foil up or fuck up somehow and foil my own man, I get mad and begin browbeating him. And then the Minis, in a show of solidarity, turn on me when one gets behind me and the other one pushes me, and I fall over and they fucking pull my pants off, right? Okay, so at least they told me about this ahead of time, because I had to go out and get entertaining fucking underwear. But I believe it may be, I'm trying to think, because a couple of times I haven't been able to find boxer shorts with big red hearts on them, so I've had to take white boxer shorts and do my own artwork. I can't with a red Sharpie. No, seriously, because sometimes you can't find fucking funny looking underwear. But if, going back to the old J.J. Dillon days when he would be exposed for his underwear choices, if you're just wearing regular underwear, it's not fucking embarrassing or humiliating to the heel figure of derision that is the manager. right?
I'm surprised Vince didn't tell you just to wear tighty whities with a streak.
Well, no, and actually, I believe I would have got out of that because there's just some things that, but anyway, I'm into this. I'm contributing to this. So I've got my boxer shorts with the fucking hearts on. And it's early in the year. I guess, as a matter of fact, it's like fucking, they started that early in 97. So it's like, it's cold weather. It's like February-ish. And so I tell him, I said, all right, we're setting up the thing with the Mexican minis. I said, shove me, boom, and I'll go over backwards. And I had my pants already unsnapped. They weren't secure, right? But the minis, I guess, had never taken a grown man's pants off. Because if they took them a second to get it. But anyway, you got to get the fucking legs. And then I'm trying to work like I'm trying to hold them on, but in actuality, I'm flipping the belt off and helping them go down, right? It's an art. So then everybody sees my shorts. Oh, shit, and I jump out and I run out the back door. And, of course, it's one of the deal where the cameraman follows me out there, but then the goddamn door closes behind me. And I'm like, oh, shit, but now it's fucking cold. Here's the thing. So I'm going to go down the street because I want them to get the shot. I'm going down the street. I'm peering in car windows. I'm like, what the fuck? What Heenan would have done. But nobody came to open the goddamn... When they ended up with the shot, I was far enough away that I had to come back. They let the cameraman back in and didn't let me back in. So I had to go around the front and come back in the other way. And it was cold. See, when you try to be cooperative, what happens?
And those poor people in their cars while you're banging on their windows.
Yeah, it wasn't like just empty fucking car. No, people are going down the road seeing me, but it's New York. So I really don't think that was the strangest thing they'd seen that evening.
Likely not, no.
Likely not.
Well, there's a lot of people who think that if this constantly happens, if you constantly get your pants ripped off, if you're placed in this position, maybe you need to look into having someone in your corner, someone who can fight against these big Connecticut corporations forcing people to do these kind of things.
Wait a minute. You're trying to segue from stories of a grown man getting his clothes ripped off in public to one of our fine sponsors who works for the common man, who defends the common man or woman or child or unborn baby against the greed and avarice of major corporations and helps them navigate the shark-infested waters of the legal jurisprudence system. And boy, that Prudence, she's a bitch. Is that who you're referring to? The man, the one, the only?
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. He'll sue the rest.
Brian, if that is indeed the segue that you were trying to make, it's beneath your talents to have made that awkward of a segue, but I'll go with it anyway because, folks, Stephen P. New, we've talked about him so many times. He's one of us. He's a fine, upstanding member of the cult of Cornette, the consigliere of the cult of Cornette, a wrestling fan from way back, West Virginia, population 412. Salute! He is a man who will fight for your rights because he believes he's one of us, whether he is defending an entire city who's been given cancer in the state of West Virginia or engaging with people all over the country to get them their rights and privileges that they are entitled to for being wronged and put upon. He can do it for you, too. 888-692-8084, newlawoffice.com. And did I mention also he is a fine comic book collector as well? Stephen has so many endearing traits. He's the Mother Teresa of West Virginia. without the wrinkles. Anyway.
Because Mother Teresa had a great comic book collection.
You know, she did really. She concentrated on Marvels, but every once in a while she'd get the DC keys just to have them. But anyway, folks, Stephen P. New is the man for you. Remember, he can't take every case in the world. Some people in Zanzibar and in the western plains of the northwestern territory, he might not be able to help, but he can help most everybody, or he can point you in the right direction. Give him a shot. Give him a try. Stephen P. New, the man for you. Get even with Stephen.
That's right. And before we get to any questions or any more questions here on the show, Jim.
Have you asked a question?
I asked you about your pants.
Oh, here's another pants story. So
Okay.
I haven't told this one in a while. But by the way, I talked to Bobby Fulton the other day. He is feeling better. He had an infection post-surgery that was really making him feel miserable, and he didn't even realize that's what the big problem was, and the medicines kicked that out, and he's feeling a lot better. But I've told the story before when he set my pants on fire while I was wearing them. That may be somewhere out there. If you're a new listener, real briefly, in the D.C. Armory in Washington, D.C., we're there for a match that night with the Fantastics, and we're down in the locker room, and it was really hot down there. It was cold weather outside, but they had that steam heat from the radiators in this old junky building. And it's really hot and stuffy down. We're sweating in the locker rooms. And I go in the stall in the bathroom to take a piss. And boy, it's hot. And boy, I'm sweating. And I look down, and a line of flame was coming up my right leg as a rib. Bobby Fulton had balled up some toilet paper and struck it with the lighter and thrown it under the stall door. But what he didn't realize was I was wearing those Sansa belt slacks, and polyester melts into a liquid when you fucking set it on fire. So my and it catches quick too, right? So I look down, I'm pissing, and I'm thinking how warm it is in here. And I look down, and my whole right pant leg's on fire. And I see the polyester starting to drip. Now, if that gets on your skin, it can fuck with you. It's dripping off the edge of the pant leg, right? So I whip those pants off real quick, boom, and jump out of them, and fucking jump out of that stall. And Bobby's laughing. He didn't mean to set the pants on fire, right? But so I've stomped them out. And I'm, what the fuck? And I laughed too then once I wasn't burned. So I throw them in the garbage. And I go and I get an old wrinkly pair of pants out of my suit bag because we're on the road for a couple of days. So anyway, we go out for the match. And Bobby had a promo in his mind. We were going to go first, me and the Midnight Express. And then here comes him and Tommy Rogers, the Fantastics. And he had some kind of promo in his mind that he was going to slay me with. And he, as a visual example, he was going to hold up my pants that he had set on fire. And I don't know. And he didn't really even get that far, because as soon as and Tommy Rogers had told him, don't do it, Bobby, don't do it. But as soon as he came to the ring and he held those pants up, and I think he got on the microphone and said something about, Jimmy Cornette, I've got your pants right here, and something or other, like in the, what happened to them is going to happen to you. But I got the microphone from the ring announcer afterwards. I said, Bobby Fulton, you've been just dying to get into my pants. And everybody laughed at him, and he just fucking. But anyway, that's when they were set on fire, but they weren't taken off in public.
Other than the last Stampede matches, where part of the stipulation was you would get out of your clothes and into a diaper, of course, different stipulation, different town, were there any instances of you getting your pants ripped off in Mid-South?
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I would almost have to think. And as a matter of fact, well, at least once I got one of my jackets ripped off by the fans. They got a good grip on it, and I let the jacket go rather than fucking going down to the ground. But that, that wasn't in an entertaining clothes ripping off fashion. That was sacrificial to save my neck. But it's part of the thing. And then that's why they had clothes ripping street fight matches in Tennessee. where it was different rules in the early 80s they came up with. It was really to embarrass Jimmy Hart, because poor Poo-Poo, they would strip him, I mean, badly. And he wore these little tiny Speedos because Jimmy was not portly. He had an athletic physique to him, very skinny, and not, and he could get into some smaller underwear. And so he wore these little skimpy underwears, and they would just, it made the newspaper in one town in southern Indiana, up above Evansville. The street fight matches at that time in that territory, the rules were different than your standard, like a bunkhouse match street fight, or Mid-South Wrestling street fight. Wear anything you want, bring anything you want, anything goes. Well, this was a no disqualification match also, where you come dressed like you're going to be in a street fight, but the object was to rip your opponent's clothes off. That's the only way to win the street fight match, is when an opponent got his clothes ripped off. So they started having these again, Nightmare and Speed, Danny Davis and Ken Wayne were in a bunch of them. Dundee loved them because Dundee was always going over, right? And he was always the one ripping all the heels' clothes off. And they loved to finally get Jimmy Hart in there and rip all of his shit off. So, I mean, the guys were wearing all the time old jeans and shirts and sometimes to help the match and not fucking rip your skin off, you'd gig the seams in the clothes so that they rip easier, especially jeans and shit, because you can get hurt. Actually, you can fucking mash your balls off trying to get blue jeans ripped off of you. But anyway, at this one spot show us one night, normally they would rip Jimmy's clothes off all the way down to his Speedo underwear. And then he would do the big take and cross his arms in front of him and run like the wind back to the locker room, like Dangerously did in our Great American Bash match when I stripped him in Baltimore in a tuxedo match. And that was the big pop, right? Well, this day was probably Dundee and Steve Kern, two merry pranksters at the time. If you were at a spot show with Kern or Dundee across from you, you didn't know what the fuck was going to happen. They ripped all of Jimmy's clothes off and then ripped his Speedos off too. And he's fighting. I'm taking pictures and ring announcing at the same time, right? He's fighting as best he fucking could. And they got then they gave them back to him. And he had one end of the Speedos in his left hand in front of his dick and the other end of the Speedos in his right hand, like a butt floss. And that's how he did his run back to the locker room. And the people were going absolutely berserk. There must have been, let's say there was, 700 or 800 people in this gym. The town is like a population of 3,000 or 4,000. It was a Thursday night spot show in between Evansville and Louisville. And those were common. So pretty much everybody in town was either in the gym, related to somebody that was in the gym, or knew somebody who was in the gym. And this was on a Thursday night. By the following Sunday morning, the preacher did a sermon in the local church about the nude wrestling that they had at the gym the week before. And the newspaper was a weekly newspaper. So I think I've still got the article around here somewhere. Naked wrestling causes controversy at such and such, school. And it was, and they said, well, it was supposed to be the street fight match where they're always only supposed to go down to their skivvies, but apparently some of them took it too far. And it was and the sponsors were not happy, and neither was Teeny.
I was about to ask you, was she there that night?
Yes, she was not pleased. Not in the least. That's another, but at the same time, you can hear the conversation between her and Jerry, because Dundee's the booker there and he's Jerry's right-hand man, and Jerry got a kick out of it too, but he's got to hear from Teeny, who's got to deal with the sponsors. But there was no more nude wrestling, and there was a reduction in the number of street fight matches after that in the territory as a whole, and no more nude wrestling though.
Did the Fabulous Ones drive her crazy?
The famous story, it doesn't indicate that they drove her crazy. They didn't drive her crazy, and Stan was always especially polite to Teeny. But there was Wednesday nights in Evansville was nobody's favorite night of the week. There was some fine fans in Evansville, but not a ton of them. And the building was the shits. And it was a rotten payoff, pretty much. That was your worst payoff of the week, unless a spot show really sucked. And so to brighten things up a little bit, especially when Stan and Steve were driving in Stan's panel van, they would turn the back parking lot of the Evansville Coliseum on Court Street into what Teeny came to term. They've turned my Evansville parking lot into a whorehouse with their whorehouse on wheels. The van was the key. The van always came to Evansville because that way, instead of sitting in the catacombs of this building that, honest to God, was probably starting to fall into disrepair when Strangler Lewis wrestled there, and he did, in the same locker rooms and had the same showers and probably sat on the same toilets. They would go outside and do their best to spread joy amongst the female wrestling fans of Evansville. And one time they had to switch the matches because something happened or somebody was a car trouble, whatever. And instead of going on last, they were going to switch the Fabs and go on next to last. And that match was going to be last. And they start playing the Fabs music. Everybody Wants You, Billy Squire, right? 3 minutes and 45 seconds or whatever. And the music is playing and the heels are in the ring and there ain't no Fabs. And people, where's the Fab? Where's the Fabs? Where's the Fabs? And the referee is, where's the Fabs? And they're trying to find the Fabs. And they start the song again. They went out and Teeny goes out and knocks on the van. Fabulous ones, you're on. Oh, shit. And they had to come straight in from the van to the ring. So that was another instance that, but it was Evansville. My favorite thing about Evansville was at least I'd get pizza at the Rocka Bar. Stan and Steve's thing was they'd get a different kind of pie.
Well, Jim,
have I mentioned that the store at JimCornette.com has been closed for the past little while we restock and refresh for the holidays. And this week, Thursday, October the 1st, Cornette's Collectibles will reopen at JimCornette.com. We invite everybody to come to the grand reopening. It'll look much the same as it did before because the new site is not ready yet. That's going to be a future thing. We didn't want to monkey around before the holidays, but the brand new, big new, by popular demand, the new products, Brian, I've been teasing this. I didn't want to start any panics, but by popular demand, and that's actually not even a rib, because more people have asked for these specific things, actually physically either emailed or tweeted, brought it up, asked about it, than anything else that we've, I think, ever brought out this far. Cornette face and thank you, fuck you, bye face masks. Now you too can not only be good citizens and cover up your germs to avoid spreading them to others, but you can, with either the Cornette face or thank you, fuck you, bye, encourage others to practice, if not at least social, extreme distancing by getting the fuck away from you. You can put on the Cornette face and show them how gobsmacked that you are that they're that close to you. Or you can go with thank you, fuck you, bye, and just tell them actually to leave you the fuck alone. But anyway, face masks by popular demand, along with all of our other favorite items and some new 8x10 photos, including a new classic shot of me in pink and purple from the 80s that has never been offered for sale before. It's just darling. It's just fabulous. Anyway, JimCornette.com. The store opens for our holiday season Thursday, October 1st this week. What do you think about that? Huh?
You want to bet it'll open?
What are you? You're waiting. You're putting a hat on a hat here. I'll tell you what. I'll bet you, you son of a bitch. I know who to bet with. I know exactly who to bet with. The folks at MyBookie.
I was gonna bet you about your pants being ripped off again, but
MyBookie. Hey, unless everybody's been living under a rock, you know that the NFL is back. And the NBA playoffs are back. And they're not letting a lot of people around them, but so far they're back. But that can only mean one thing. You can sit at home and not catch the COVID and bet on these games. It's winning season at MyBookie. Folks, regardless whether you've been betting for years or you're ready to play for the first time, MyBookie is your best bet this season with the biggest online selection of bets and props. Brian, they've got the biggest online selection of props. I give them props for their props. Their props are properly done. You don't have to prop them up. They are properly propped props, and they've made it simple to win and easy to withdraw your cash. And after all, that's not really the big thing, the winning. It's the getting of the cash, and that's important here. And right now, they've got a $100,000 super contest for only a $10 entry, and they're giving away $5,000 in cash prizes every 4 weeks. You'd be crazy not to invest in your sports knowledge with that kind of potential return. If I had sports knowledge, I'd be betting. But you can sign up at mybookie.ag and use the promo code JCE to claim your 100% deposit match all the way up to $1,000. You put 100 in, they'll give you 100 to go with it. It's easy to jumpstart your bankroll and get started on your winning season at MyBookie. MyBookie.ag, promo code JCE.
That's
right. What you were talking about, wasn't it?
That's exactly it, yes.
All right. You were going to bet on the pants, but you had to bet on this.
Yes. We're betting on something, one way or another. There was a bet to be taken right now. So, I bet you we're not going to ask any questions yet because we got to talk Ring of Honor.
Does that mean you're still looking for Charlie's question that he sent you?
No, I have several questions, including questions from Starkville, Mississippi here, in case we get to them. But we got to talk about Ring of Honor last week. You said you wanted to watch it again this week.
Yes, I did. And I was just kidding you about Charlie's question. I'm sure you will get to Starkville, but I know that you have no problem finding his questions. But anyway, yes, I did want to talk about Ring of Honor again because, as we said last week, we got a lot of good feedback on it. Here's a company who, instead of hot-shotting when there's no need to hot-shot, the ratings for AEW and NXT that are in the ratings war are pretty much similar, or I don't want to say stagnant. They go up and down based on opposed, unopposed, but within a certain range. They have not really gained a ton nor lost a ton. They are somewhat similar and have been for months and months, right? Is this a fair assessment? Not talking about who's winning the race, just talking about in their particular neighborhoods, the ratings for both of those programs have been within a certain range.
Yes, I would say so. Consistently
okay.
So.
Now, Raw and SmackDown are losing a bit because they're just actively just sucking. But nevertheless, instead of hot-shotting and just giving people more of the same shit when right now basically the same people are watching everything, Ring of Honor is the one company that we've seen that tried to say, you know what, let's just slow this fucking down. We've already got talent that's quarantined. Let's not let the rest of them, be paralyzed. All the stupid stunts and the furniture and everything. Let's get back to wrestling. Let's do a tournament. Let's provide programming. Let's profile our talents. And I guess not even all of their talents, because they've got a lot of international people that have not are not allowed to be in the country. But let's take our talents that can perform this style and let's get this over. Let's get something over. Let's establish these guys. Let's establish a baseline. This is what the sport is. And then over a period of however long it is that this unfolds, after this tournament, whatever they do from here, feed back in the shit that we now take for granted that is in every match, that's so repetitive and redundant. Everybody dives. Everybody uses a blunt instrument. Everybody gets run over with a fucking truck. Everybody does everything. They're concentrating on building something for the future so that when somebody does go outside the parameters of good taste and decency, whether they cheat or they lie or they steal or they're just an over-the-top personality or a little bit stranger of a gimmick, that starts standing out. If you can build something to where when somebody throws a closed fist punch, there's repercussions, then it's a whole lot easier to do an angle than it is when it's chaos reigns in a particular place and nobody is ever penalized for doing anything, no matter how heinous. So this is what Ring of Honor's decided to do with their pandemic and with their time off from selling tickets and having live crowds, is to concentrate on their base product, profile their talent, give them something to fight for, and doing something positive for the future of their business, which is basically what they're doing. Is they're doing a restart of pro wrestling from 125 years ago. Brian, what do you think? Wrestling was wrestling 125 years ago. And if somebody got rough and, on the break, it was a goddamn case for, mention in the newspaper. And then it got opened up more and more and more and more until finally, now we've come completely around. And now, hopefully, it won't take that long, but they're spotlighting the base product because their ratings are going to be the same. And they're owned by the company that owns the stations. So they have programming there. But it's not like if somebody watches a wrestling program, to me, at this point in time, in this day and age, except for as we've talked about, the peripheral people who they lose from Raw and SmackDown because it just fucking sucks and they got better things to do with their life now. But the rest of these programs is the diehard wrestling bubble, and better to think long-term for your product than just show those ever diminishing amount of people more and more shit that you can't top. Does that make sense what I just said?
I think so. It is certainly the sports-based presentation that a lot of people have wanted, and more than anything, it completely stands out because WWE has their style of wrestling. NXT's slightly different. They try to take things a little more seriously there. AEW, we've said it before, it's not an alternative to WWE, it's alternative WWE. This is radically different. And, I'll bring it up here. One of my thoughts watching this week is it will suck after the pandemic if they just go right back to the way things were. This is a wonderful opportunity to kind of rebrand Ring of Honor and make it a little bit different. And in doing so, make it stand out from everything else in wrestling. Because AEW is the core of guys that were in Ring of Honor for a few years now. They all went to AEW, abandoning Ring of Honor all in one fell swoop. But this is a real chance for Ring of Honor to do something different and rebrand themselves. I don't know if they'll take it that way. I just hope that after the pandemic, it's just not right back to silly angles or anything else, because I think there's a really great opportunity here. It's so unique and so different, and it's being done so well on that show. In that
case, if they get a bunch of good feedback on it, then maybe they won't be tempted to go back to the same old gaga. Because, I was thinking of something else here when I looked at not only some of the stuff that getting ready for the watch along. I was just seeing some of the things that were on the network and remembering what happened around those instances. Do you know what doesn't draw in wrestling anymore, ever? An angle. Because you can't tell them from the rest of the fucking program. It is switched to where, 30 years ago, yes, there was a lot of talent on the cards. In the Crockett locker room, we had Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express and Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson and blah, blah, blah. The fans were seeing those guys on every house show and every TV also. But we could tell when business was going to be up, not by the matchup, but by when an angle was done on television or when a hot finish was done and it was showed. That's how we saw that business was going to be up. You could tell because of the response to the angle that was shot. That's the whole reason for shooting angles in the history of wrestling, is to increase business. So, but now the names and just the first time, so-and-so against so-and-so, we haven't seen that before. And then it's downhill from there. Once you've just done that match, the people are like, now we've seen it. Whereas in previous years, as long as your angle was good and as long as your finishes in the program were good, you could have the same match multiple times in the same markets until you gave the people what they wanted to see in the end. But now it's just once they've seen two guys wrestle each other, okay, we've said now we need a new dream match. The angles don't mean anything because they can't tell the goddamn angles from everything else that's done on the fucking television shows. Just in my opinion. But anyway, yes, this is a sports-based presentation, and it flies by. It's an hour show. If you zip through the commercials, even less than that. And what more could you ask from formatting? You understand, they recapped the previous week's matches. They had fresh comments from the guys that had won last week. And then they did the same thing this week as they did last week. A package on each of the guys, a sit-down package on each of the guys in the two matches in the tournament, and then their match. And I had not seen, I'll be honest, I hadn't seen David Finlay. Obviously, he's Fit Finlay's son. I knew of him and know who he is, but I had not seen him.
Based on who he is, I've never seen him do an interview before. And we'll talk about their interviews in a bit. Were you surprised he didn't have an accent that he is he's an American apparently? I didn't realize he's from Georgia.
Well, yeah, Fit moved over here in the early 90s to work for WCW. That was almost 30 years ago. How old do you think this kid is?
Well, late 90s.
No, Fit was in WCW in what, by 93-ish?
No way.
94-ish?
No,
wasn't
maybe
he?
97 probably. 96 or 97.
Okay, well, that's 24 years. I bet you the kid's 25. So, point is, he doesn't sound like Cadbury, no.
Those promos before every match and last week's show as well, I'm blown away how good they are. Ring of Honor did a great job using the archival footage wherever they can. I mean, for the Seidel match, when you see him and Delirious as young guys and now today, it's just they did a great job with it. But the ability of the guys to sit there and talk about professional wrestling, treat it like it's real, which is the thing we're always saying. We're not saying the fans have to believe it's real. Treat it like it's real. These promos are so good. I mean, they're so effective. Everyone seems genuine. We'll talk about Delirious in a bit, but everyone seems genuine. Everyone seems like a real guy. You understand their story, their motivation.
And hey, and let me just say this, it saves some of these guys because, I mean, still Matt Seidel does not have a tonal quality to his voice that would intimidate you. Let's put it that way. And David Finlay, like you said, not only didn't have an accent, but also he's young. Some of the other guys that they have from last week, the point is they take younger looking, younger sounding guys that in the AEW environment just look like, whiny, nasally voiced kids. But they sit them down as an individual and you hear them talk, as you said, naturally, and you hear about their sports and athletic background with B-roll to back it up, pictures or video of them competing and doing shit. And it comes off like a UFC package. And then you can excuse a guy's got a whiny voice because some of the UFC fighters do too. And they're speaking about themselves truthfully in terms of I traveled to Japan and I trained in this discipline and I did this or I whatever. And they're not talking about wrestling like it's real. They're not talking about it like it's not. They're omitting the fact that it's a work. Everything else they're saying is a shoot. Who they've traveled and who they've fought and how they've trained and what they want. As Jared Jarrett used to say, tell them the truth as long as you can. Because then when you start working them, they won't know the difference and they'll buy it. Because if you start out with horse shit, they're distrustful from the beginning. So all these guys are speaking about their backgrounds, how they feel. They're omitting that wrestling is a work, but everything else is pretty much natural. And the thing with Delirious, and Delirious works his gimmick, and that you will never see a picture of him without his mask in public. He always works the gimmick, but even in this way, he modified it to where they used the English subtitles, and it stood out because it was different than what everybody's been doing. Somebody actually did some kind of wrestling bullshit here, but it was done in still, I mean, what'd you think? Still in a serious way that told the story of how they were friends.
Well, yeah, when I said, we'll talk about Delirious, I wasn't saying that was bad. I like that. I like the fact that he was able to convincingly talk in gibberish, and they put up the subtitles.
Yes.
But there was nothing silly about it. Like, he was looking serious. He was talking in his gibberish. The subtitles told the story.
If he'd have been talking Japanese and the subtitles were there, it was so effective. It was like it was treated like it was the same thing, like he was speaking a language. It's not. It was the hokey done unhokily. But that's the point. You've got to, and a lot of people are going to watch one of these shows and they're going to say, "Well, there's no entertainment and there's no trash talking." Right. Because this is the start. This is the first round of the tournament. This is the beginning of a new presentation of a new style. If you just, as Dutch Mantel used to say, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. There has to be somebody that says, we're going to fucking hold on here. We're going to get back to the goddamn root of the matter. We're going to lay down a baseline of behavior in our sport that when someone comes along that breaks those rules or that stands out from the crowd or that is different because they're such a wild over-the-top personality, either people like them or they don't like them, but they can't be contained. But if everybody's crazy or there are no rules or everything's fucking open for fucking discussion, you've just got a mess, which is what everybody else right now has got.
And when someone finally does start talking trash, it's going to stand out.
Yeah. Oh, just somebody already on Twitter said, well, the first motherfucker that won't shake that other cocksucker's hand is going to be an asshole. Yes, that's the idea. Anyway, David Finlay, you mentioned, and Rocky Romero was the first match in the sports-based presentation, the graphics. Boy, if only one of these other companies had anybody that was any good at statistics, instead of hiring a fucking nerd Mark to write comedy statistics. If they had a professional statistician to check this out, because these stats are shoots. In Ring of Honor, they've gone back and done it. Rocky Romero is 15-6 all time against David Finlay in New Japan. Finlay is 6-2 overall in Ring of Honor, but he's 12-4 in New Japan so far in 2020. It makes everybody look good and nobody look like an idiot, and nothing about, the fucking guy going to be a drunk and going to do some yeehaw cowboy shit. That's what I noticed about the statistics.
It's really funny when you think about it. AEW, they're using a lot of the guys that have been the stars of Ring of Honor the last several years. They're doing that style of wrestling with some elements of WWE mixed in. Ring of Honor is doing what AEW said they were going to do. They haven't been doing it up until this point, but it is interesting that now, here at this point, Ring of Honor is now doing the sports-based wrestling with the statistics and everything being logical and making sense. And once again, I'm going to rave about this. Fantastic commentary.
Yeah.
This commentary team is the best in wrestling right now. And I know that they're not doing angles, so you're not hearing like, oh my God, he hit him in the head with this or whatever. They're calling it like wrestling. But I'm blown away by how good Ian Riccaboni, I'll get this straight. Riccaboni. And I'm forgetting his partner's name.
Caprice Coleman.
And Caprice Coleman. They are fantastic together.
Okay, listen to what I wrote, the first line in my notes on this match. Ian and Caprice should be on a sports network, because that's the tone of their voice and their delivery. Not only are they doing a good job with what they're saying and playing the parts, where Ian is, Ian is obviously the play-by-play guy, the lead announcer, your Pat Summerall. I just pleased all the 50-year-olds. And Caprice is the classic color. Oh, and so I've said, somebody got on Twitter and said, why did Cornette say Caprice sounded like a colored guy? You dipshits, color guy, color commentator. The color guy in any sports broadcast is supposed to be the expert, the analyst, the guy who tells you how something affects you, whether the block in football or the throw in, wrestling or whatever the case. And Caprice is doing that. He's been a wrestler, but he's glib, but he doesn't sound like a professional announcer. He sounds like the ex-jock, and they match together so you can tell each one of them apart by listening to them, and you want to listen to what they're saying, because it's not just fucking hoo-ha that's going by at all the same tone. And I love the tail of the tape, even though some of these guys are just painfully small, and that exposes that, but still the tail of the tape you get in boxing, you get in MMA. That's the first thing that we wanted to do, and I'm obviously Delirious is still head of creative on this thing, but that's one of the standards that we used to differentiate Ring of Honor when Sinclair first went on the air, to differentiate it from the entertainment wrestling. But anyway, with Finlay and Romero, these guys can work. And they had a good match. I like that they keep the clock going during the commercial breaks. And then they show a highlight when they come back. But it wasn't like, it didn't hurt the integrity of their sports-based presentation, because you can tell that amount of time is what elapsed, right? So it's not like they're just trying to pass something off on you. But these matches, like I said, this isn't something you can do with every talent in every match, because a lot of them wouldn't be able to hang at this style, especially the ones that didn't have good training backgrounds or haven't been to Japan. And you can't do it like this forever, because people would, honestly, the same as AEW has a crowd that just likes wrestling to be a goddamn shit fest. There is still a limited audience for people who want to appreciate the pure art form of professional wrestling without any trash talking and angles and cheating and lying and stealing and whoring around and etc. But you can open it up later. They're doing a tremendous job, and then those things will register. And right now, like we said, they're using their time. Finally, Rocky Romero forced David Finlay to use his second rope break. They only get 2, and then if you're in the ropes, you can still be pinned or submit. It doesn't matter. But as far as Rocky had pretty much taken Finlay to the limit to get out of that, then Finlay turns I do hate this name. Romero tried a sliced bread.
When I heard that, and I've heard it before, but when I heard that, I said, I wonder what Jim thinks of that name.
Well, because Spanky started it, and there's another name I hated. I didn't hate the guy, but the name was just so silly. But somebody ought to come up with a different type of name for that. But that's, the sliced bread into a nice looking backbreaker. And then Finlay hit his finish. Boom, 1, 2, 3. And a nice match. And then the second match, as we said, was Delirious and Matt Sydal. The packages, especially with Delirious, told the story. They were friends. They trained. They broke in. They are friends. They trained and broke in together. They know each other. They had the visuals and the graphic stuff, to pictures and video to back this up. Here was my favorite statistic. Delirious has been the head booker of Ring of Honor since sometime in 2011. I can't remember when 2010, because it was, late 2010. Kerry changed from Adam Pearce to Delirious. So in 10 years, I don't know if you saw this or not, but would you have ever guessed what his career Ring of Honor TV record is?
I was shocked when I saw that.
1-0.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I said, that can't be right.
And I think I remember when it was, because it was one of the on-the-road type tapings that we were doing in the early days, and I believe it may have been somewhere in the Midwest to where it was around St. Louis. But no, Delirious took the booking job as seriously when he got it as anybody that I've ever been around took it, being a part of creative or being given a shot as booker or whatever. And the first thing he decided to do was only work sparingly. He loves to wrestle, and you can tell the fucking condition he's in, by the way. He's fucking shredded, just ripped, great shape, but he loves to wrestle, but he would only wrestle on smaller shows and put guys over. And occasionally, because the people liked him, he'd get a win, in a underneath match on a spot show, and even then that was rare. Because he didn't want people thinking he was pushing himself and etc. And but after 10 years, he's been on ROH TV one time, but he won that one. So he always puts himself over every time he's on television. But it did list tournaments that he had won, because he's pretty much put his wrestling career, think about this, anywhere else on ice for Ring of Honor for that job over these last 10 years. He went to Japan a couple of times early on when he was helping foster the relationship first with Noah and later with the different companies. And then Seidel, they came up with his 5-2 in Ring of Honor versus Delirious. So he's beaten Delirious in Ring of Honor more than he's won. Yeah, he's won more than he's lost, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is Delirious responsible for this pure title tournament?
He's the head of creative. So that's why I've talked about working with him in the past. He took the job seriously in terms of when he was given the chance to be booker. I think actually, I don't see how he's a much more laid back person than I am, which is probably how he's avoided either going to prison or a lunatic asylum. But he not only takes that seriously, but he takes the business seriously. And, he's been on creative this whole time, and they've had other people in there with him at various points. And I think they made a concession to one of the British talents earlier this year that didn't work out well. But, you can always count on the guy you can always count on. And he's been there. And he's always had – he was obviously you have to have entertainment in wrestling. But Delirious was on board with the idea of actually doing something different from the start that would help the guys and help the business in terms of not having to get run over with fucking tanks and, end up in body casts from every match, and to have a little bit more serious approach. And so I don't want to give him credit for everything single-handedly, because there's a bunch of fine folks working on this, but I would have to think that at this point, this is his creative.
If that's the case, my hat's off to you. We've watched AEW every week this year, NXT, we've watched Raw, we've watched SmackDown. This is the best show I've seen all year.
Well, I was about to say, he's the only head of creative as consistently, because now he's 1-1 in Ring of Honor television because he tapped out for the other guy. Dusty never tapped. This match.
If it was Dusty, every guy would be doing a promo about Delirious on TV.
and then Delirious would figure 4 one guy while he was small packaging the other guy. But no, anyway, this match, Delirious and Seidel, was I thought the tightest, most legitimate looking wrestling match, because let's face it, Delirious going back 10 or more years was teaching the Ring of Honor wrestling training school. So he works out constantly. You can tell by the condition he's in, but he does ring work also that it relaxes him, right? So he's in fantastic shape. But they were able to transition in and out of leapfrogs and spots and then go back to wrestling and look like they never lost the plot of a contest. I love now they've started establishing some things. A guy got a warning for his first closed fist punch last week. They established the rope break system last week. Now this time, Delirious used a rope break as an offensive move. Seidel had a hold on him, but he grabbed the top rope, which the referee called as a rope break. But he grabbed the top rope so that he could vault up and do an offensive move. So he used one of his rope breaks to deliver something to his opponent. Imagine this strategy. It's cool to get a base and reestablish the rules. Remember when you were a fan, everybody knew the rules of wrestling, and instantly when a heel had done an automatic DQ or something the referee should have seen, that instantly got a reaction because all the fans knew, and now they just sit through it because they don't think it means anything. And at one point, Matt Seidel, did you see the splash on Delirious while Delirious's legs were bent back underneath him?
Oh, I felt that one, yeah.
Fuck me. I would have never walked again with the shit that I've got in my knees. But so then he did that and started the leg kicks and some reversals, and then finally tapped him with the Cobra Clutch. And there you go. A nice hour of wrestling.
Are you actually going to watch next week with Kenny King?
I'm going to watch the first half. I wouldn't watch a Kenny King match for all of money, marbles, or chalk in China. That's an obvious difference of opinion I have with Ring of Honor management, that they let that lying sack of shit slink back in the door after his fucking run in TNA that he fucked everybody for, including lying to me, lying to Delirious, going back on his handshake agreement, fucking his partner Rhett Titus, fucking Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, fucking Ring of Honor. Goes down there to be a star, and then he flunks out because he's the shits, and then he slinks back in and they let him. I wouldn't have done that. But I'm the one that had to go to Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin, and when I had to talk them into putting them over, because I said, well, they're going to be deader than 4 o'clock if he stays, so he's given us his word that we're going to be able to work this out. And then I had to go back to Charlie and Shelton and go, you were right. I was wrong. You shouldn't have put him over. We should have done a different thing. But some people are more forgiving than I am. But I'll watch next week for half the program. But once again, this is what we were promised over on another channel. So it's obviously doable. They just can't figure out how to do it. Perhaps if they had someone to talk to, Brian.
Now that's a transition. If over at AEW, if they had somebody to talk to, somebody to bounce some things off of, somebody to vent their spleens as to why they've ended up the way they have instead of the way they wanted. Folks, at BetterHelp, they will talk to you, no matter who you are. And believe me, with some of the members of the Cult of Cornette also. Now, come on, you guys know who you are. A lot of people don't want to talk to you. I find that some people sometimes don't want to hear from me. But BetterHelp won't hang up on you, folks. They'll assess your needs. They'll match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in less than 48 hours. They've got a broad range of expertise available, which may not be available locally in many areas. As well, if you live in the rural areas or you just don't want to go out in the middle of the pandemic. BetterHelp can give you quality counseling online or on the phone. You can schedule a weekly video or phone sessions so you don't have to sit in the waiting rooms, etc. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Go to their website, BetterHelp.com, and read the testimonials that are posted every day. And while you're there at BetterHelp, that's H-E-L-P, BetterHelp.com, you can join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional by using this code to get 10% off. BetterHelp.com/JCE. BetterHelp.com/JCE. You get 10% off your first month's services. So, we've read the emails and the testimonials or the stories of the folks in the Cult of Cornette that have tried it out. They seem to have enjoyed their experience. They've been helped. Maybe you can too. You never know till you try. And you can log in your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. It's not like a 9-to-5 type of thing or even banker's hours. My bank is now open longer than most normal businesses, but still bankers have the bad reputation of having short hours. Anyway, folks,
I digress. BetterHelp.com/JCE. 10% off your first month. They will help you today. Do you need some help, Brian?
I don't, but I do remember.
You need some help finding some questions?
No, I got questions, but I remember when my bank used to close at 2 p.m.
Well, they were just lazy. Mine was always open till 3.
Let's get some lazy questions right here on the show.
Up a lazy question. All right.
Have you been following the, I don't know what to call this, the Twitter antics of T-Bar from Retribution?
Well, I did see that he had tweeted their Who Shot John explanation for why they got signed to contracts, because it was cheaper than paying the medical bills for all the security guards they kept beating up, which maybe in 1983 would have flown in Alexandria, Louisiana, but it was a weak attempt at explaining the inexplicable. But has he done more? Is there more?
Well, there's a couple of things. After he tweeted that, Chris Jericho quote tweeted it and just wrote, "Huh?" with a question mark. T-Bar responded to that with a screenshot of some headlines and wrote, "Huh?" And the headlines are, Sturgis rally where Chris Jericho's band play labeled as super spreading event. The recent controversial Fozzy concert may be the cause of 250,000 new cases. And Sturgis rally labeled as COVID-19 hotbed. Chris Jericho, Fozzy, and then the headline cuts off so you don't see what it said, but he responded to Chris Jericho with that, which is pretty funny.
Well, old T-Bar and old COVID lung.
Well, there's another one that just happened as we're recording. I guess at some point, Eric Bischoff made a comment about Retribution.
Lord.
And he said, quote, it's a little graphic here. It says, "It sucks." Eric Bischoff on the Retribution storyline. Well, T-Bar had a response.
He should have followed that up with, "It sucks. It should have been on Nitro."
Well, T-Bar wrote, "Thank you, Eric Bischoff. You are a huge inspiration for Retribution. We too aspire to one day destroy $1 billion wrestling company and bury it under the fiery wreckage." I'm starting to like T-Bar.
Hey, T-Bar, go T-Bar. Isn't T-Bar, doesn't that sound like, am I thinking of a Seinfeld episode where all the gang had tough street gang nicknames? Or is that another television program?
Was that the Van Buren boys?
The Van Buren boys, possibly. I don't know. They bury $1 billion company in the wreckage. I don't think they'll be able to do it quite as competently and efficiently as Mr. Bischoff did.
Now, another popular topic a lot of people have sent in, and I'm trying to pull this up right now because there's graphics and there's an article. Did you see, Jim, the article in Variety entitled WWE's Mounting Problems, Audience Declines, Saudi Arabia, Andrew Yang by Gavin Bridge? Okay,
well, go to the poll that they did in that article.
I got it.
I don't have it in front of me. You got it in front of you. Add up the top 3 categories are, if I recall correctly, people who used to watch wrestling. It's basically they're answering the question of why don't you watch wrestling if you used to watch wrestling, and the wrestling is either too much more cartoony than when I watched it, the characters, they use that word, aren't as good, or the matches aren't as good. Those are the top 3, right?
Well, I have it here, and it appears that they let people maybe vote for more than one category.
Well, yeah.
The way I'm taking it, but the top
there's a lot of big percentages there, but the vast majority of people fit in those 3 categories that answered those questions.
The top 3 categories are, it seemed more cartoonish than when I liked it, the storylines were not as good or interesting, and the characters were not as good or interesting. What do you think this
There
says?
You go. I mean, there was 5 years ago, maybe before you were even on the program, there was another survey or poll that was done. And it really illustrated where the territories had stayed stronger, because this was in North America, which included Canada and and the United States, but I remember specifically the Canadian results. The place that had the most favorable view of wrestling and had the most fans per percentage, right? I don't mean like, because there's fucking 20 blue million people in Ontario and not that many in Saskatchewan, but for percentage, right? Per capita. The best reputation for wrestling in Canada came in Alberta and in Quebec. And then Ontario wasn't far behind, but it was because of the obviously Stampede Wrestling. And in Alberta, wrestling was a big deal. The territory was strong. Quebec, the Rougeaus, the French Canadian, influence in wrestling. So, and then in America, a lot of regionally, it depended on whether there was a strong territory in that place or not, and when it died out. But this bears it out again. There are multiple times more people that used to watch professional wrestling and don't anymore than there are watching it now. And I don't see how anybody can dispute this anymore. I've known it from going to fan fests. I've known it from going to comic cons where you don't see just the wrestling crowd, but you see a crowd. And with almost no exception, at a comic con, 8 or 9 out of 10 people will come up and say, I used to watch wrestling, but I don't anymore. Whereas at a fan fest, it's more like the other way around. They all watch wrestling, but the mainstream audience does not. And there's a reason for that. And they just gave you the reasons, because the matches, the angles, the fucking talent, and the goddamn whole presentation is too cartoony and not as interesting.
I found this paragraph really interesting about TV decline. WWE's flagship show, Raw, has lost around 2 million viewers for most 2020 episodes versus 2015 levels, with Monday's 1.67 million viewers 50.1% lower than 2015's show. McMahon has consistently blamed storylines for the ratings plunge, without acknowledging that he is the man who signs off on the stories. That right there says it all. Every conference call, it's, we got to do better with the stories, we got to fix the stories, we're excited about the new stories. It's him. It's his stories.
Well, there you, and half of what 5 years ago, 4 million people, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, 4 million people watching the highest rated wrestling program in the country, we thought that was kind of sucky. Right? Now it's less than 2 million. If only someone could have predicted this. Only someone could have said, when you tell everybody and let them in on everything, then there's no way to fool anybody anymore. Which, not fool as in a con man, shyster, Ponzi scheme, but fool as in that's how the magic show works. If only we'd said, if you don't do so much, they won't get so immune to it, and concentrate on getting yourself over instead of your fucking stunts. All those, if only someone could have predicted these things.
Well, another popular topic a lot of people have sent in questions about. Apparently, I don't know if he's the wrestler formerly known as Ryback or if he is still known as Ryback, but Ryback went on Twitter and had some interesting comments. Did you see or hear about any of these?
I have not, but I cannot wait because of all the stupid shit he said in the past.
He did a Q&A with, I guess, his followers on Twitter where they could submit questions and he would answer them. Here are a few. One said, yeah, Vince had a few good albums. Now his records don't sell, and he has lost the pulse and insight of the world he once had. To which Ryback replied, it was always the talent. He just created a platform as a human circus that he modified from his father. The guy is a piece of shit. Can't stress this enough. World will be a better place when he passes. This isn't wishing death, but stating an opinion I believe to be true. Any thoughts on that initial?
Oh, God, well, I'm not wishing death now, but I'll just be happy when he goes. Well, I can identify with that feeling, but, some people may not argue with that sentiment because of just what we were talking about a minute ago, because unfortunately Vince has lost the plot as far as booking, or if he thinks this wrestling or this kind of wrestling or whatever is good, but it's just so egregiously ridiculous to hear it coming from a goof like that who has no idea of anything about the wrestling business, and to think that Vince never got anybody over and it was all the talent. He just created it. Ryback, you could take what he knows about the history of the wrestling industry and the psychology of same and fucking shove it up a gnat's ass and it rattle around like a BB in a boxcar. So even though he may be getting people popping for him, knocking Vince, and they're predisposed to believe that, I would want to hear that coming from somebody a lot smarter to the wrestling business and a lot more accomplished in it than fucking Ryback. Who was the guy who, remember when he said that everybody should get paid the same thing, no matter where they are on the card, because, well, it's fake and we let other guys win, so we're all contributing to it. Not understanding that he was then saying that if his logic was correct, the bit part actor that had a line in the first 5 minutes of the movie would make the same thing as fucking Tom Cruise or The Rock or whatever. He's a buffoon.
Well, another question for Ryback was, do you feel the wrestler should be unionized? He said, I simply think if AEW does the opposite of what WWE has done since Vince Jr. came along, they will take over as number one. Vince's days are numbers. I think he means numbered. Vince's days are numbers. And the ship is slowly sinking. I believe in selling for good.
Goddamn grudge much?
It might mean slightly less profits, but it's all for the best. I believe in selling for good.
Okay, how did that statement answer the question that he was asked? He didn't say anything about the union.
No, he did not.
He was asked, should they be unionized? Well, I think if AEW does, well, I guess we see where he wants to go, and I guess we see that he doesn't want them to think that he's going to be advocating a union if he's in their locker room. Because he was careful to not support a union in any way, which if Vince McMahon was really the evil empire asshole that he thinks he is, well, that's the first thing you ought to be doing, old Ryback, is supporting a union. But he doesn't know whether the next guy that he hopes is a sucker enough to give him a lot of money would be pro-union, so he doesn't want to box himself in.
Well, another question. Do you believe Triple H will run WWE better than Vince? Vince is clearly no longer the mastermind he used to be. To which Ryback replied, Pussy Paul is not the savior to anything.
God damn.
He will go down with the ship.
Well, wait, ladies and gentlemen, we have found the new Toots Mont and Eddie Graham just all rolled into one, old Ryback. He's the biggest expert. I am literally wearing socks right now that have been in and around the wrestling business longer than fucking Ryback. And he don't think Triple H can do it either. Okay, but here's the thing. If it was someone that was more accomplished and more expert and more knowledgeable about Vince McMahon and Triple H or about wrestling than Vince McMahon and Triple H, then I would take those comments on board, as they say. But when it's fucking Fatback, he's mad. He mad. That's what he is. He mad.
One last question for Fatback. In that case, what, in your opinion, will save WWE from its downfall? To which Ryback replied, changing the business model entirely to create the biggest stars on the planet and profit off that, rather than running a business that is trying to make the logo the main star for maximum profits. The fans and all involved will win, and they would actually increase profits.
Well, did he just kind of say, well, do more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff?
And that will increase profits.
Of course we know that. we've been saying that here on the program. Vince has gotten somewhat of a holiday on ice mentality where just come see WWE instead of seeing Rock versus Austin. But everybody else knows that too. If you make the guys individual stars, you will draw more money, but then you will also be at the mercy of those individual stars as a promoter. But he's not exactly coming up with a revolutionary theory here that no one has explored, proffered, promulgated in the past.
Now, in the last few weeks, Ryback has seemingly wished for the demise of Dave Meltzer and now Vince McMahon. Who do you think will be next?
Well, now, wait a minute. Was that Miro and Ryback that were both wanting poor old Dave to kick the bucket?
Maybe I'm wrong. I thought Ryback had comments about Dave, too. I'm going to look that up real quick.
Well, he probably did, but I think Miro was the one who, he should be dead and go underground. With the guy who dyed my hair blonde.
All right, I have a quote here.
I take it you're searching now for those quotes.
Here's the quote.
You got a quote.
I firmly boy, this guy has a similar theme for all of his stuff. I firmly believe the world would be a better place without Dave Meltzer. He is the most dangerous kind of mark there is, and he puts out lies for profit, creating hate for people he dislikes. He makes money off other diseased marks, but does so in a horrible way.
So then who's the baby face? Are you just called the poor marks that are being taken advantage of diseased, but yet you've said that old Dave is a horrible person for taking advantage of him. So is that a heel program? Then shouldn't we be happy that a rotten human being that the world would be a better place off without was taking advantage of a bunch of diseased marks because they deserve it?
I'm not sure. It seems like Ryback may have gone to the Billy Jack Haynes of managing your post-wrestling career. I don't know what this guy's doing.
If only we hadn't already done the BetterHelp spot. Oh, drat. Oh, well, we'll get it next time. I'm sure he won't smarten up, old Ryback. Oh, Fatback. Brian, did you ever have at the holidays? Did you ever have eggnog and Ripple?
No, that's not really.
They call it egg nipple.
Who's they?
Or on New Year's Eve, you can have champagne and Ripple. They call it sham pipple.
When you take lots of steroids, they call it back pimples.
Well, but I never heard that from Fred Sanford.
Okay. Well, is that whose material you're stealing right now? Okay.
Well, you don't recognize Fred Sanford's holiday material, the egg nipple and the sham pipple?
I've watched Sanford and Son, but I've never watched the entire run.
Dun, 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 dun. All
right, well, let's get out of the junkyard and let's get another question here. Our next question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Brian Scarborough. Hey, Jim, what are your thoughts on Bryan Adams, a.k.a. Crush? He seemed to have the size and strength that Vince loves, but I noticed he was repackaged with several gimmicks in the WWF. Was he booked wrong, or did he have true potential?
Well, both. Bryan Adams was a nice guy. I worked with him for about a year and a half there in the mid-'90s in the WWF. He was a nice guy. Yeah, he was a good worker for a guy that size. There was nothing wrong with it. I don't think he was, the biggest superstar in wrestling waiting to get out, undiscovered or whatever. I think they gave him some goofy gimmicks because at one point he legitimately lived in Hawaii, so he became Kona Crush, and he's like he looked as Hawaiian as I do. He just lived there. If I lived in fucking Hawaii, I still wouldn't look Hawaiian, right? And then he was in he was good friends with Taker, and he was in the DOA. But they tried a number of different things with him. I think they should have settled on one thing, and maybe if that didn't work, let him go for a while and do something else somewhere else and come back. And they just kind of hit 2 or 3 different things there within the space of a couple years. And it just, I mean, and then was it then toward the late 90s? Didn't he have a legal issue of some description? Put him at least on the do not call list for a little while. Brian, do you remember anything about that?
I don't remember that. He could have, but I just don't know. But he had a tag team with Brian Clark. What was the name?
Yeah,
Chronic,
yes. In WCW. And that didn't help either, because that was rotten. And I think the legal issues that he had back in Hawaii may have been due to something related to Chronic also. I'm not sure. I'm regret that I said that, because that may have been something I learned in my talent relations hat, and I shouldn't. But there were a few issues during that period of time. But I didn't have anything against him. Thought he was a nice guy. Did not. As a matter of fact, him and Brian Lee, come to think of it, were the ones that helped me out in, when they broke my back windshield in that brawl in Atlantic City. I was going to ram the cars because they had parked all the cars in the parking garage around mine, so I couldn't leave either. And I was going to ram one. And Brian and Brian Lee came through and picked the rear bumper up of a car and moved it over for me so I could pull out.
Oh, wow.
It was just a small car. But anyway, I thought, just bad gimmicks and bad booking was some of it. And I don't know, at the time in the 90s there was a lot of big, strong guys that kind of were shaped like and kind of offered the physical attributes that Brian offered. And, he might have got lost in the crowd some too there. Now he'd be Andre the Giant, wouldn't he?
I think the best stuff he ever did in his career, at least on a mainstream level outside of Portland, was his feud with Randy Savage in 94.
I remember some of that, but then didn't they do something kind of goofy as a blow-off?
Well, no, they had the match at WrestleMania. It was a Falls Count Anywhere in the building.
That's right, where they ended up fucking hog-tying him and dragging him out. He looked like he'd stepped in the rope trap in the cartoons and the Looney Tunes. Backstage.
I don't know if I ever told you this story. I've told it on 605. But a guy who rented office space from my family had a company called Star Trek. And they did these 3D photos where they would take a photo and kind of pull the main image out so it looked like it was popping out. And WWE became a client of his. And he did these 3D photos of The Undertaker and Bret Hart and Randy Savage. So because of that, he had a table at the first Fan Fest that they did for WrestleMania X in 1994. And because he rented space for my family and he knew I loved wrestling, I got to be at that table and really just walk around when the public wasn't there, which was awesome. I mean, it was just the greatest time. Hung out a lot with Hillbilly Jim, and he gave me like all these Coliseum videos. It was great.
Oh, yeah, Jim's great.
So I'm there. I think it was at least Saturday and Sunday. I don't know if it was Friday, too. I don't remember off the top of my head. I have the pass over here somewhere. And on Sunday, as the Fan Fest is starting to close down and everyone's gone and people are starting to dismantle their booths, we're getting ready because we've got 4th row tickets for WrestleMania. So we're kind of just going to walk from there into the main building because it's right behind the arena. And various wrestlers are there and they're all awesome. Bam Bam Bigelow, the Head Shrinkers. Talked to Bam Bam Bigelow about the Giants because I had a Giant starter jacket back then. And we decided before we go into the arena, me and the guy's name was Mark and his brother-in-law, we all had to go to the bathroom. Now, I was only 14. They were all adults. We go into the bathroom, and in the bathroom...
Wait a minute. You mean you're only 14, where they're all... You're scared to go in the bathroom by yourself
well, no,
when you're 14?
The point is just to lay out the scenario of what was going on. It's me and 2 adults. Okay. And we go into the bathroom, and in the bathroom is Pat Patterson, Randy Savage, and Crush going over the finish of the match because that's where the match ended, was that bathroom.
That's right.
And when we walk in there, Randy Savage turns around and goes, "You got to get the fuck out of here." And Mark Cooperman kind of puts his hand over his dick and he says, "Macho Man, we got to piss." And Randy says, I don't care what you got to do. You got to go. And we left. And then, when he came out, we're all yelling at him during the match. And I go home and I watch the video, and the match ends in the bathroom we were in, where they were. And you can't even really tell it was a bathroom, but that's where we were before WrestleMania happened. We were in there, and we got kicked out by mostly Randy Savage. Crush and Pat Patterson were just kind of standing there not saying anything, but Randy did all the talking.
You never know who you're going to meet in the bathroom.
No. At Madison Square Garden.
Or anywhere, for that matter. Did I ever tell you a story when Chris Candido ran into Thesz?
Yes, I remember that story, yeah.
Well, then I won't tell it now.
Well, tell the audience. You have to tell the audience. You have to tell the audience.
You said you've heard it.
I've heard it.
Last thing I want to do is bore you.
We have hundreds of thousands of new listeners. Tell them the story.
All right. So fucking Chris Candido in 1994, after Paul Lee had screwed Dennis and the NWA on the NWA title tournament, they had another one, and they put the belt on Chris Candido so that they could get somebody that they could trust holding the belt, and then he held it until they put it on Dan Severn when they made the deal with Dan. So at that point, Chris is still in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but I gave him some days off to fly to do some other commitments, some other matches, whatever, for the NWA, right? So he gets back to Knoxville one weekend, and he can't wait to tell me this. He's been in the airport, and he goes in the bathroom, and he's standing in front of the urinal taking a piss, and he looks over, and like 2 urinals over to his right is Thesz. Lou's just flying back home, probably to Norfolk. I think he lived in Norfolk at the time, over in Virginia on the beach out there. So, of course, Lou does not know Chris, but Chris knows Lou. So he goes up and introduces himself. I assume after they finished, all the business they were doing, Mr. Thesz, and he's telling me his stories. Mr. Thesz, it's so nice to meet you, sir. I'm one of the boys. I work, and right now I'm the NWA champion. He's trying to figure some way to tell Lou Thesz that he actually is, instead of some fucking goof, right? He's somebody. But can you imagine in 1994 somebody telling Lou Thesz they're the NWA champion in an airport bathroom? And Lou, of course, is gentlemanly and friendly. So, are they doing well? Well, yeah, we're trying. Well, good. Anyway, the upshot of it was that Lou had to go catch his plane, but the one piece of advice that he gave Chris Candido as NWA champion, he said, now just remember, young man, when you're flying around the country making all these shots, watch out. Somebody's going to try to double cross you. In 1994, right? But then Chris, he didn't bother to explain that the reason why that he was the champion was because somebody double crossed the last fucking. And so, but anyway, nevertheless.
I once ran into Abdullah the Butcher in the airport.
How much did he charge you?
No, you know what? We were coming back from Fan Week in 95, and the flight was from Knoxville to Atlanta and then get on another plane, Atlanta to JFK. And on both planes with me is Marty Gorman. So me and Marty are in the Atlanta airport waiting for our next flight. And who do I see in a white suit with a cigar in his mouth but Abdullah the Butcher in the airport in Atlanta, of course. I had just been hanging out with Masa Hori during Fan Week, and I knew Masa was tight with Abdullah. So I figured I got an in. I'm not a name dropper. This is like one of the few times I dropped a name. I went up to him. I said, excuse me, Abdullah, I'm friends with Masa. And right away, that was all I had to say. Oh, I love Masa. How is he? Tell him I'm going to see him soon. I'm not going to see Masa again for a while. But I got him to sign a Japanese magazine I had that Masa gave me. And while I was talking to him, Marty was scared that it was Abdullah the Butcher, and he was kind of hiding. And then there were two women behind Abdullah who just kept mouthing to me, who is he? Who is he? Because they knew he was someone famous now because I was talking to him and kind of...
Are you sure they weren't saying, what is he? What is he?
But yeah, Abdullah the Butcher coming back from Fan Week in 95 in the Atlanta airport.
Well, and that would have been August, right?
August 95, yeah.
September, October, November. That was right about the time that I fucking called him up and booked him for Thanksgiving weekend that year, I believe, when he ended up no-showing because he got a last-minute tour of Japan and fucking called me and said, I can't make it. I said, what, next week? He was supposed to be the hitman, the mystery man. No, it was 94, I think. No, it was 95. The mystery hitman that was coming after Bullet Bob.
And by the way, he was working for Giant Baba, All Japan Pro Wrestling. They didn't have any last-minute tours where they...
Yeah. Well, that's why I said it just came up. Uh-huh. All righty then.
All right. Well, let's get another question here on the show. This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Whit in Boston. I was wondering what your thoughts were on recently released WWE producer Mike Rotunda and his gimmick of IRS.
Oh, okay. That's the whole question. I was waiting for the flesh out. Well, good. Some of these people are succinct and to the point. No, I always like Mike. I got to be honest with you. I wasn't a fan of IRS because it was mid-90s WWF where everybody had a gimmick that was a takeoff on their fucking profession or their alleged profession or whatever Vince had a phobia of. He went to the dentist and suddenly became Isaac Yankem.
He got audited and all of a sudden Mike
he got audited and suddenly became IRS. And I thought Mike Rotunda himself was a fucking great talent. He was a hotshot amateur. He was a good babyface, but I really liked his heel work in the Varsity Club with Kevin Sullivan and Rick Steiner. I don't know where Captain Mike Rotunda came from when he suddenly became a ship captain in the weird time in the weird time in WCW there and the only booking time. But I like Mike, and he was a good worker and a fucking good talent, and he was great for the territories. He and Barry Windham were a good team. Of course, he's in the family. It's not like IRS sucked or anything. It's just, it's not like, that's not one of my favorite gimmicks that I'd put on my list of favorite gimmicks of all time. Not because who was in it, but just because it was another one of those, the plumbers and the fucking IRS people and the whole, just the trademark of the professions. Nobody believed he really worked for the IRS. I could believe Joe LeDuc could have very well been a fucking lumberjack in Canada. Even though I had never seen one in person, he goddamn looked exactly like one would look, right? But I'm pretty goddamn sure that the guy that I had seen on national television wrestling for another company a year and a half ago hadn't spent the intervening time working for the fucking IRS.
And his name just happens to be Irwin R.
Shyster, yeah. Or Thurman Sparky Plug.
Well, that one was really bad because they wanted it to be STP, and Thurman Sparky Plug was TSP.
I don't think they ever wanted it to be T. I think they wanted it to be Sparky Plug and just came up with some kind of hillbilly fucking first name.
Because all these guys... Henry O. Godwin was Hog. Phineas I. Godwin, Pig. MVP was whatever, Montavious something Porter, I think.
Vidalia.
Is that what it was?
I don't know.
There was no one...
Vivacious.
I can't think of too many examples of someone who I love a small section of his career, and the rest of it, I could take it or leave it. Mike Rotunda in the Varsity Club is fantastic. Yeah. He had good matches. There's one with him and Brad Armstrong on a Clash of the Champions that is great. And he was great as a heel. His interplay with Steiner was fantastic, and then finally they turned Steiner babyface against him. Great run as the TV champion. From 88 to 89, he was fantastic.
Goddamn, wait a minute. I just remembered something. IRS was a takeoff on, because remember WCW made him Michael Wall Street.
That's right. Briefly.
And so Vince just had to rip that off. Because he was still wearing a suit, but that was the whole York Foundation thing when Tommy Rich became Thomas Rich and Ricky Morton became Richard Morton.
Well, it was kind of before, I think he was the first person she managed, and then after he left,
yeah, well, I mean, in that era,
Terry Taylor became the tailor-made man.
Yeah.
People still made that rooster noise. People didn't forget that rooster gimmick.
I never could get this joke by on fucking TV. I said one time in Tupelo, on the Tupelo show when I was in Memphis first starting out, I said, Lance, you know what you get when you cross a pig with a woman from Tupelo? He said, no, Jimmy. I said, nothing. There's some things even a pig won't do. But you know what the other fucking the offshoot of that joke is? You know what the difference is between a rooster and a woman from Tupelo? A rooster says cock-a-doodle-doo, and a woman from Tupelo says any cock'll-do.
Oh, my God.
See,
horrible.
Yeah. You know, you might need to cancel the noise out of your life when you hear things like that. And the noise-canceling wireless earbuds from Raycon are exactly what you need, folks. Raycon's newest model, the Everyday E25 earbuds, are their best ones yet. 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass. And all of us need more fish in our diet. More bass, a more compact design, and a noise-isolating fit. So when I tell these old jokes, Brian, you can stick these Raycon earbuds, stylish and discreet, right in your ear holes there, and you won't hear a thing. And you can give them a try because Raycon has a 45-day free return policy so that you can make sure that they're the pair of wireless earbuds that you want, that you need for you. Folks, for a limited time only, you can get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/JCE. That's BUYRAYCON, buyraycon.com/JCE. 15% off on the Raycon wireless earbuds. Make sure to check it out now while the deal's still running. Don't be left out in the street in your heart-decorated boxer shorts and it's cold outside. Buyraycon.com/JCE. Just cancel the world out of your ears. Listen to what you want to. Hello?
I'm testing them out right now. I'm trying to cancel all the noise here on the show.
Oh, just canceling my noise. All right, well, here, give me some more of your noise, and then I'll take over.
A few more questions and then the watch along, which you will use to save the show here. But a question that several people since we've been recording here on Sunday morning have sent in. Jim, what are your thoughts on The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, coming out to endorse Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
Well, the last thing that I want to do is get too vitriolic on this subject. But in all seriousness, I even saw people on Twitter after I retweeted The Rock's tweet, like 15,000 other people did or whatever. And I actually saw people on Twitter now. Well, The Rock, what do we expect from a member of the Hollywood elite? Like The Rock is, yeah, he's an elite Hollywood star, but like The Rock, half Samoan, half black, 27 or $7 in his pocket when he became a wrestler. And he was sleeping on a mattress that he got out of a dumpster. And, you know, and if anybody thinks that he's, you know, born with a silver spoon in his mouth or just was handed everything that he has ever had, such as the current occupant of the White House was, read all the books about it. Or that he's now a member of the ritzy-titsy Hollywood elite. Rock has worked for everything he got, worked and overworked. I don't know how the fucking guy slept for the last 20 years. So even some of these people have drunk this Kool-Aid to the point where they will now turn on The Rock because he's the equivalent of Nancy Pelosi or whatever. Get fucking real. He's even came out and said that he's voted both Republican and Democrat before.
Didn't he speak at the Republican convention once years ago?
He may very well have, you know, but he's also a human being with common sense and some integrity. And he sees what the difference is and what all of this means. And I'm sure his agent or, you know, whatever studio he's going to work with, oh, don't run off the 40% of the Trump fucks or whatever. But he has to be honest and give his opinion and say what he thinks about a bad situation that we're in. So without even hammering the unfortunate occupant of the White House that we're currently saddled with at this point in time, and hopefully for not too much longer, it goes to show you that The Rock should be an elected politician because he shows that he stands up for what he believes in instead of towing a party line. And it also shows how far gone some of these suckers and rubes are out in the fields and the hinterlands that now they're going to turn on The Rock because he wants to relieve the United States from the orange menace. Jesus Christ. But I'm proud of him. I'm proud of it. I wish more of the boys had some balls and some sense together. Sense to know which one to pick and balls to say it out in public.
And he's not a Hollywood elite, he's a Miami elite.
Yeah. He's elite in Miami. Hey, a guy that inherits and or is given while he was still alive hundreds of millions of dollars in property and cash and prizes from his father, that guy can go piss up a rope. But a guy who's worth tens of millions of dollars when he's 45 and he had a total of 750 or maybe 350 when he was 20, he deserves it.
Let's get our next question here, Jim. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from John Smirka in Masontown, West Virginia.
Oh, so he's smirking at us, eh?
I remember several years ago, Vince taking part in a question and answer panel with fans on the WWE Network. He was asked what his favorite style of wrestling was, and his answer shocked me. He said he could watch Fit Finlay and William Regal wrestle all day. Is this true, or was he ribbing the fans? If it's true, then why have we endured so much crap wrestling over the years?
I think that, first of all, who do you say Fit and who?
William Regal.
Fit and I don't know that he's ever sat and watched them wrestle all day. If he booked the match in his company, he watched that, but I don't know if he watched it more than once. I think that's something that Vince either would like to be true, that's why he said it, or wants people to think that it's true, which is why he said it. But if you asked him to elaborate, he'd probably say, but that's just for folks like us that like the true sport of wrestling, but of course it won't sell, or something like that. That's what he'd follow it up with. So no, that is totally not the kind of wrestling that he's always had the vision of. But in his mind at that point, that was the answer that he wanted to give. That, like I said, for either he wants it to be true, that's the kind of wrestling that deep down he really likes, but of course he sees that he could never sell it, so that's why he has to make all these concessions, or he thought that was the answer that sounded best to the audience that he had.
The style of wrestling that WWE produces, do you think it's the style of wrestling Vince likes, or just the style of wrestling that he truly believes would do the best business-wise?
Well, see, both. He doesn't want to admit it, especially to an audience of hardcore fans, because who else is going to be on the network, right? This is not just a guy down at the mall that just wants to see the fucking Austin and the beer truck. So, of course, they want to hear him say that. But I think he would like that to be true, that he, really likes that, and it comes back to him having the, the genetic jackhammer, having the balls of steel, being a, man's man. He would almost say it like reverently when I remember when I was a kid and you'd watch so-and-so and he'd shoot the half. That's a Vince expression also, like shoot a half Nelson to turn the guy over to pin him. It's an amateur wrestling thing. He'd shoot the half and he'd hook the guy and do this and do that. But he never made any attempt at promoting wrestling, anything like that. Even when his father was still alive and still the head of the company and he was an announcer, they weren't promoting the WWF had some of the hokiest wrestling in some cases in the country before Vince Jr. came along and got in charge. So they never promoted that, but it is what it is.
Your time around Vince, was there ever a match that he raved about? I mean, was there ever something that you watched and you said, wow, Vince really loves this. This may be his favorite match?
No, he never. I mean, every once in a while he might recall or bring up a match from the past. It wouldn't be in the context of, wow, I remember that as being a great match. It would be in the context of that, of the business aspect of that match, or, you know, something we did there that might work similarly here, or this drew that amount, but not just, wow, that was a great match that I watched as a fan and really enjoyed it. And it's not applicable to what we're talking about here, but golly, I really liked it. No, you never, you know.
Well, not that, but just.
And he liked matches at the time he saw them. He would always praise guys if they had a good match on pay-per-view. He'd never see that match again. He would, unless it was for some type of television production. I can't imagine that there's ever a match that Vince has gone back and watched again just to see it. It would have to, if he sees something back from the past, it's because of a television or video project that they're working on. So it's not like he ever, I've said he absolutely, and this has been borne out other places, and he's told other people this, that they're now revealing in these interviews. He never watched anybody else's wrestling but his own, and he never really rewatched his own except for work. And then, you know, he had his writing team. We would go through the shows and pick out, you know, things that needed to be VTR'd or just write in the format package. And the folks at the studio would take care of recapping in a minute and a half what went on in that particular segment. So, you know, he's seeing it as it's going out on television is the only time he's ever seen anything again. So he puts guys' matches over, but that's at that point.
Do you think Vince is a fan of wrestling?
No, he's a fan of selling tickets to wrestling. And he, remember the quote in one of Bill Apter's magazines in 1986 when he actually did a legitimate interview with Vince, and
Larry
Vince said,
King. It was a Larry King interview.
It was the Larry King interview. But it was a legitimate interview transcript. And he said, I want to be the Walt Disney of wrestling. And that's what, you know, Walt Disney didn't have the most realistic mice, but they sure made the most money off of them. So he's always been about selling the sizzle, not the steak.
But they also don't break kayfabe once you enter the world of Walt Disney World.
Well, that's true. You know, you can tackle one of those fucking mice and kick the shit out of him. He won't take his fucking head off.
I don't know if they still do it, but for years when they hired a executive or a senior executive, they spent a day in Disney World in one of the outfits. So they understood what that was like.
I'd have to make sure I got that job first before I put that.
All right. Well, before we wrap things up and go to the watch along, 2 questions from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
I knew it.
Here's his first one. What do you think about Jeff Cobb turning down an AEW contract to join New Japan Pro Wrestling? How much of his decision do you think had to do with the way AEW used him in the one match he had there?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for the guy and his thought process. I don't know him. I've never met him, but it's the proof is in the nanner pudding. They made him an offer he didn't take. He went to Japan. Apparently he either didn't like his first time in, or he's seen what they've done with other people they brought in there. Hey, if I was any kind of star and I saw the way that they put Miro on television, I'd be, okay, that's it for me. I'd rather go out in the fucking public maskless and gloveless and take my chances with COVID than take my chances with their booking, putting my career on a ventilator. At least he knows what he's going to get with Japan. And he knows the style of wrestling they're going to do and probably approximately how they're going to treat him. And he figured, I'm safe here. Who knows what the fuck? I'm just explaining to you that you're going to see more and more guys that have never been on TV that just want to get on TV join AEW instead of people that have been on television and had established careers because of the the fucking haphazard way a lot of these people are getting booked. And unless they come in with explicit creative control over their shit, and even then, as we've seen sometimes, when you let the boys up to their own devices, they're their worst enemies. But I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised about Jeff Cobb.
I think AEW really blew it with him. He's a guy with a world of potential. He's really good, and like a feud with him and Brian Cage would have been fantastic. But
well, I don't know, because that's two guys that are really thick, and it may be a style clash, and then who gets over? Because they ain't got Cage over yet. And I don't know if he's experienced enough to take care of himself or not.
It's not his fault.
Over, but Cage has to have the matches.
It's not his fault he's not over. Let's remember the way he's been booked since he...
Well, we don't know yet. See, that's the thing. Once that we figure out... Yes, it's booking in a lot of these cases with these guys is why we're like, what the fuck? But then if you book them properly, then we have to figure out whether they can do their shit right or not. And you can't tell that with a lot of these guys because the booking attracts so much attention for being lousy. And everybody here is still in various stages of green. So we need to see. But the jury's out. I don't know. Cage and Cobb would not be a match that I would book simply because who would be the fucking leader? Who would get over? And are you nullifying each one of their strong points by having guys with similar strong points and they're with each other? Big, wide, strong bodies where they can throw people around. They look more intimidating and more impressive doing it to other people that don't look the same as them. See what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. And again, I think
if one guy was established and had been over for a few years in this program and the other guy comes in, that's one thing. But starting them from pretty much scratch, I'd keep guys like that away from each other for a while.
Well, before we get to Charlie's last question on this topic of AEW booking, several people have sent in this question in different forms, different variations of the same question. So I'll ask you this one. Sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Germ in Dayton, Ohio. I would love to hear Jim's opinion on if replacing Tony Khan as Booker with a committee consisting of Jim Ross, Arn, Tully, Taz, and Jake Roberts could save AEW.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No, I think it'd put all of those people in a goddamn mental institution or a fucking correctional facility. Give me that list of names again.
Jim Ross, Arn, Tully, Taz, and Jake Roberts.
You've got a variety of veterans with varying degrees, but all of them significant success in the business. But you've also got, it's a committee. It's 5 different people that think 5 different ways. And they could it would be great if Cowboy Bill Watts was the booker and he was getting advice from all of those people and knowing what to do with that advice. That'd be one thing. But just having all those people as a committee, you wouldn't be any better off. I mean, you'd be better off than where they are now because some of this just really stupid shit wouldn't take place. But still, it does not work. A creative committee or a team or whatever, there needs to be a booker and any number of assistants that he wants that give him input. Not everybody running the fucking show and pitching their own shit in and then polishing it up into something because it'll be going in 100 different directions. It just doesn't work.
Do committees ever work?
No, that's what I'm saying. It just doesn't work. Explain to me a committee that's ever worked. Show me the first one. It doomed WCW. I mean, and now they have teams of writers. These aren't even booking teams or booking committees. They're teams of writers. And it's the shits too, but it wouldn't be good if there was just one writer because a writer ain't a booker.
A lot of fans love and romanticize 1989 NWA, and I'm one of those people. I love a lot of it. The summer period before Ric Flair took over, where there was a committee. Although if you watch those shows, there's a lot of things, some stuff feels like Memphis because it's coming from Eddie Gilbert. Some stuff feels like Florida because it's coming from Kevin Sullivan. It's all over the place, really.
Yeah.
Do you think people overly romanticize the 1989 booking committee?
Yes. Because do you remember what happened with the numbers after George Scott before Ric Flair during the booking committee? They kept going down. They kept going down because George Scott threw it in the toilet, and then 5 different people with 5 visions doing 5 different kinds of things to get people back created more confusion. And that's why Flair, looking at the numbers and looking at the shows and looking at everything, went and said, I need to be the fucking booker, and I'm going to be the fucking booker. And he was. He was named the booker, and of course Herd, as we've mentioned many times, promised to leave him alone and didn't. But from, what was that, August or September through February of the next year, they did the best numbers that they would do for the next 3 fucking years, 4 years, easily. Because there was one booker and people helping him.
Okay, our final question from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. Cody Rhodes has been denied once again for the trademark for the American Dream name. This is the 3rd time Cody has filed for the trademark and been denied. What are your thoughts on Cody's fight for the American Dream trademark?
Well, who's got it trademarked? Anybody?
I'm not sure. I could look that up real quick. It may be WWE, but I'll look that up while you talk about this.
How would the WWE have trademarked that when Dusty used that for 20 years before he ever set foot in the WWE? If it's not trademarked and the son of the person who made it, whatever it may be in sports or entertainment or whatever, I'm just asking this as an open question. If it's not trademarked, because the person who was used it and identified with it didn't trademark it, and that person's son or offspring try to trademark it, how come that wouldn't work, I wonder? We might need to get Stephen P. New on the phone. I can think of no, and I can't understand how WWE not only would have trademarked it, but would still have it trademarked today.
I'm looking it up. I see Cody's application here. Entertainment services, namely live appearances by a professional wrestler and sports entertainment personality. Entertainment services, namely personal appearances by a professional wrestler and sports entertainment personality. Now they're using sports entertainment in the applications for trademarks, I just noticed, which is nuts. I don't know exactly why they keep denying him. Well, I guess that's it.
Well, there you go. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks for coming.
Well, on that note, and without any satisfaction to that last question, it's time for our watch-along, Jim.
Well, on the experience, we watched the part of the Midnight Express Road Warriors match from the Crockett Cup 1987 in Baltimore, and we discovered that the full Crockett Cup that year, or any of the Crockett Cup that year, for whatever reason, is not on the WWE Network. However, there is on the WWE Network a lot of these Saturday night World Championship Wrestling TBS programs, especially the one that we are going to be looking at today from July 12th, 1986. And this was during the Great American Bash Tour. And, we wanted to, some people asked, why didn't you watch the Road Warriors Midnight Scaffold match? Because we've talked about that ad nauseum. And also, even though it's the most famous match, to be honest, it doesn't show what any of those guys could do because it's a scaffold match and it was pure gimmick. And the finish in Baltimore at the Crockett Cup was really wild and people were into it. But a more average look at what the Midnight and the Road Warriors were doing night after night in the spot shows or in the house shows is on this program. As I said, it was from the 86 Bash Tour. This was not a Bash event. This was because we were all over the country in so many different places that month. A lot of times they couldn't get back to Atlanta on a Saturday morning to do the TBS program in the studio. So they were taping the TBS programs out on the road. So this was in Raleigh, North Carolina at the Dorton Arena. And it was not a Great American Bash event, but because business was so hot and because of the card, which I'll tell you here in a minute, It did a $74,000 gate, which was the all-time record for Raleigh, North Carolina. It was a complete sellout of the Dorton Arena, which I say somewhere around 8,000 people, give or take 500 or so. And it was on, hold on here, July the 6th, 1986 was the night this actually was taped in Raleigh and then aired on the 12th. So this was a Sunday night. So that ain't bad when you can draw 8,000 people in Raleigh on a Sunday night. The complete card for this event was, in addition to the NWA World Tag Team title match, we're going to watch the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express. I won't give away the result just yet, spoiler. But also Dusty Rhodes and the Rock and Roll Express beat Ric Flair, Ole, and Arn Anderson at a bunkhouse match. Wahoo McDaniel beat Tully Blanchard, reverse decision. Magnum TA beat Nikita Koloff in a Texas death match. The Warlord beat Gene Ligon, Ronnie Garvin beat Black Bart, and Ivan Koloff beat Rocky King. And I'm pretty sure that's all the matches, because they let a few of these have some time. There may have been another TV match or two. And that was the card for, this was a time where we had been running Raleigh every Wednesday night. Then we had backed up and it was only every couple of weeks, but still, you know, a pretty decent house for that time period in that town. And I like this match because, as I said, even though this was a TV taping, we were doing TV tapings 2 or 3 nights a week in those days. It wasn't like this was a destination point. The matches weren't even promoted the previous week on the TBS program, because that just wasn't the way things were done in those days. That you turned on the show, as you'll remember sometime from you watching in your younger days, you turned on the show and instead of from the studio, hey, we're in Raleigh tonight. We've got some great main events for you. Holy shit. Okay. But this was the same thing. We got to the show an hour before bell time. So you're working with the Road Warriors. Here's your finish. And we're taping for TBS tonight. So stick to your times. That was pretty much the direction we got. So it wasn't like we built this up as a huge blow-off match or a big, attraction. And also, as far as laying the match out, I don't know if people are aware of this, Raleigh was the extreme example of social distancing when it came to the wrestlers seeing each other before their matches. The babyface and heel locker rooms were on opposite sides of the building, and to get from one to the other, you had to either walk straight through the people, and it'd be obvious, so that was out, or you had to walk out the outside and walk around the building and meet in one of the abandoned little wooden ticket booths that were around the fairgrounds outside the Dorton Arena. And that wasn't a common occurrence because you still didn't want anybody to catch you. So those ticket booths were mostly used for visiting with female fans before your match. So this match was an example of what we were doing in the house shows every night, because we just went out and had our regular house show match. Dennis and Bobby called things, and, they called it as it happened. And then we did the, whatever finish we were given. We worked with the Road Warriors same way as most people did with the Warriors, especially they'd only been in the business 3 years or 4 years tops at this point. Yeah, summer of 3 years as a team and less than 4 years from when they actually broke in. Anyhow, you would do something that highlighted or accentuated their power and their strength and their mobility and their agility. For guys that size, they could do the flying shoulder tackles and drop big elbows and shit. So you would do something where you started out, looked like you were going to try to do something, but their power and strength would foil you. The heels would take big bumps and they'd bail out and let the Road Warriors fire the people up, and you'd do the regroup session. And then you would start another thing from scratch, and then you'd make that spot pay off, and you would do that till you got to the heat. The reason why there would be the stops and starts was because if you let these guys go 100 miles an hour, they would beat the shit out of you through the opening part of the match. And also, because that way it could register, because Joe and Mike, neither one could do a lot of different things. They just did the things that were good for them to do. So you wanted to put all of their shit over and get the most out of the least, so that they didn't have to beat you into powder, because they could pick you up and throw you down all day. Then when you got the heat, as we mentioned on our previous watch along, if it was 2-on-1 or behind the back or a manager interference or a foreign object, they'd sell like Ricky Morton, because they knew you were going to build the fucking heat to where the people wanted to see them make the tag and the big blow for the comeback. And that was the signature of the Road Warriors match. Not only the entrance, but the big comeback at the end, and then whatever happened. So that was the formula the Midnight kind of, stuck with. And then other people started doing it that way also to get the most out of Animal and Hawk. And one more story real quick, that somebody said, well, why didn't you tell a story about the scaffold with Animal? Joe was the strongest one. Mike was strong, but Joe was cartoon strong. And so in the scaffold match in the Omni, I knew the finish, and I knew that the only way that I was probably going to be able to get underneath that scaffold to hang on to the ladder underneath and drop without falling over the side of it head first and killing myself was if somebody that could fucking hold my bliffed ass up was holding on to me. And that's when, also Hawk had the injured leg. That's why Ellering climbed up one side and Hawk had me on the other side. I was cornered because Hawk got finished with the match. We didn't want to take another chance. But Animal was the strongest one, so he was out there, and I got with him beforehand. And here was the deal we made. I said, I'm going to get down on my stomach, and when I start reaching over the side of that thing, grab my leg. And he held on to my leg like he was trying to pull me back to me, but actually he was holding on to me so I didn't fall and kill myself. And when I had a good grip on the ladder underneath, his cue to let go of me was when I screamed, "Let go of me!" Because even if the people heard that, it's what a motherfucker would be saying. And that was his cue to let go of my leg, because I knew that Joe was the only one that was strong enough to keep me up there if anything happened. So he was my last insurance policy. Once I was out of his hands, nothing could save me. But he was my last insurance policy. I didn't go head first. So anyway, so this. Oh, and I must also my costume that you will see in the opening shot of this. This was the summer of '86. Dusty had put me on color of all the programs. I did color on the Saturday night TBS show. I did color on syndication. Big Bubba, my bodyguard, was dressed up in the suit. Dusty said, "Kid, get one of the big wicker chairs with the big back and a Panama hat and the corsage, and you get the picture of lemonade, sweet tea, and you look just like you're at the plantation." So I'm all plantationed out. This was the summer of my plantation look, because he thought that Louisville, which is kind of more of a Midwestern city, was somehow somewhere around Savannah, Georgia, or Charleston, South Carolina. So that's why I'm dressed in such a fashion. Brian, you remember that, my famous Panama hat and plantation period.
I certainly do. One other note, this was a really memorable episode of the Saturday Night TBS show, because it was not just Road Warriors Midnight Express. It was, I forget if it was a bunkhouse match or a street fight match.
Yeah, no, that was the bunkhouse, Rock and Roll and Dusty against Flair and Arn and Ole. I mean, they shot the house show and showed it, which was unusual to see these main events on free TV back then.
And like you said, you're wearing your very interesting outfit. You conducted the interviews with the heels throughout this episode. And on that note,
and by the way, it is 140 degrees in the Dorton Arena in Raleigh in July, because even though the sun had gone down, we were the main event, Midnight Road Warriors, so it's dark outside, but they started the show, it was still light, and Dorton Arena is that architectural wonder in Raleigh, where all the windows are around the whole round building, so all that sunlight pouring in, it's 100 million degrees, and the TV lights, and not an empty seat. We're all ready to fucking melt when you watch this also.
On the WWE Network, you're looking for the World Championship Wrestling episode from July 12th, 1986. It may be a pain in the ass to find it due to the navigation on the WWE Network, but if you search for Road Warriors Midnight Express or Midnight Express Road Warriors, it should be one of the options that comes up. Once again, World Championship Wrestling, July 12th, 1986. The time of this clip is 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 11 seconds into the show. 1:02 and 11 seconds. There's also a jump to option at the bottom. The jump to clip is Midnight Express versus Road Warriors. Jim, are you ready on your end?
I am ready.
The way we're going to do this is a 5-second countdown. After 5, we will say press play now. On now, as soon as I'm done with the word now, press play. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press play now.
Boom. And there I am. By the way, yes, I am indeed not a good-looking man when I wear a hat. I look like Opie Taylor when I wear a baseball cap, too. That's why you never see me. I was 24 years old there, Brian. Look at that building. Once again, the entire territory was on fire at this point, and even the non-bash events were selling out. I love those old belts. Nikita Molkovich made those in the 60s, and of course then Manny and Rude took off with them right after they had redone them. I've got my replicas, but that's the pre-redone when Klondike Bill had just painted them bronze. They look decent on TV.
How long had you guys been with Bubba by this point?
Bubba came in May. This is July. Look, he doesn't even barely, he doesn't have the beard yet.
Yeah.
And of course, this is a house show on television, so we're going to take some breaks in this. And there's Sam Houston with the armbar on George South and that beautiful graphic. Anyway, and once again, a wide shot of the building. And there's the Road Warrior pop. And folks, if you have the sound a little bit up underneath us, you can get some more feel of this. And I should mention also, and this is going to figure in the finish, it's a long way in Raleigh in the Dorton Arena from the locker room entrance to the ring. The music's been playing that long. Here come the Road Warriors, because this is the match where Baby Doll has to run in at the end. And she's late because the ring is so far away. Anyway, look at that's the fucking sight right there. The red shoulder pads and the cartoonishness in the WWF to lighten them up and making them more entertaining. No, they were a post-apocalyptic nightmare. Hawk just snapped the cuff off with his neck, and of course the camera missed it, because this was Crockett Promotions in the 80s, and they're going to miss a lot of stuff. Tommy Young, the best referee in the history of wrestling. But they came into the ring, and they looked like that, and then they backed it up. And look at Paul Cornette, and we're all melting, as I said. But we looked at this like a house show match, because it was a house show, even a big house show, but a house show. And so we've got the 15 minutes or so. We're going to do our thing. Instead of jumping right into it, this gives the announcers time to set the scene and, bring people into the gist of the thing. The World Tag Team title is on the line. Raleigh, it's sold out, whatever the fuck. Big Bubba, how will he figure in this? Paul Ellering on the other side. And that's another, everybody watched Dennis Condrey, both his body language and also his facial expressions. When you talk about people that nobody works like anymore, that was different than everybody else. Dennis was the captain of these matches. He was the first captain of the Midnight Express. He's calling most of the things that there are to be called. I don't know what I'm playing with there in the ring. Is that something that we need later on? I'm not sure. I wish I still had them red drawers. Look at Joe. He's just fucking massive.
Lock up, headlock.
Boom. And now Dennis is going to take a ride. Boom. And you say, oh my gosh, he's just a brick wall. And look at the people. Yay. you're going to show that these guys are so much stronger. But now look at Joe's athleticism. Boom, and an elbow, a leapfrog and an elbow, and bail out and regroup. And now a lot of the fans will be screaming, oh, they're lazy. They're not going 100 miles an hour. It's because the people were reacting to what was going on. You make it look like the Road Warriors are so dominant, they have you off balance. You got to regroup. You try something else. It doesn't work. Joe and Mike were not guys that you could call spots where they constantly drop down, leapfrog, drop kick, arm drag, hip toss, keep moving. You had to slow them down, set something up, and then get their power and their explosiveness to pay off. Now, see, this is going to be the other way around. Now, instead of Dennis running, it's going to be Animal running. But the same, boom, drop kick. Not the highest drop kick in the world. Bail out, regroup. Because who's ever going to see a fucking guy that size doing a drop kick? And now Dennis is like, fuck this. And I'm, whoa, wait. The people are fucking into whether or not that the Midnight Express are going to give up and leave because they can't take care of the Road Warriors. And I'm trying to beg them back into it. I think at this point, Bobby's saying, here, let me have a chance, or give you a little fucking advice.
Now, the Road Warriors had made shots before in 85, let's say, but it was really the beginning of 1986 they came in full-time to Crockett Promotions.
Yes, you are correct. In 85, they were all over the place because they were carrying Vern's company after Hogan had left. And now, by the way, Dennis is telling Tommy something that Tommy needs to tell Hawk. So Hawk goes over and hears it. But the Road Warriors they were doing big business in Montreal in 85. Where they were going to the promotion up there. They were doing big business. They did a big show in Hawaii. They obviously were starting to go to Japan. More promoters were starting to use them independent of Vern, and it's just that Crockett had the national TV and the resources to pay him more than everybody else was going to. Dennis getting some fucking heat, flexing his double biceps next to Hawk. And now Hawk just does that, and people, and Tommy Young knocking on the traps. And it was here, it's 100 degrees in the building, so we're going to flex and keep people involved. Okay, here we go. Dennis is going to try something else. Animal decided to fuck with him a little bit. Little lock up. Go to the eyes. They'll sell the eyes because there's no eye machine at the gym, but here's the spot they learned from Lawler. Boom. Hawk's the only one that doesn't sell the pile driver because of those rock hard traps. And we're screaming, turn around. Headbutt. Boom. Out. Done. Regroup.
A lot of people in that crowd standing up, lifting their hands up, jumping up and down at various points here. Fans totally into this.
And that's how could you, another break, how could you go 100 miles an hour with these guys without burying them? The more they do to you, the more weaker their shit looks. So instead, you parcel it out a bit. And as a matter of fact, I think Bobby, they may have edited part here, but I think Bobby's about to get in because there's a funny spot coming up that shows you Bobby can roll with anything. And by the way, that's Jackie Crockett, the handheld on the right beside Dennis Condrey down on the floor, the black sheep of the Crockett family. Here we go. Now, this is the spot they've been doing in the house shows. Bobby will jump out there. Animal will press him back in over the top rope. Hawk will clothesline him, but look at Bobby's leg. He got the camera cable caught in the thing. Boom, and there's a clothesline, and now he's going to take one from Animal. Boom, and he's still tied up in the goddamn cables. And that causes a big fucking, look at the people. They're standing up, they're screaming, they're jumping up and down. So that's the payoff to the spot. And now we go over and check and make sure Bobby's still alive. It starts out, boom, boom, boom. Then you do a big payoff, and then you let them settle down. If we start doing shit while they're still screaming, of course, now this advice is not good for today because they don't scream that long. But if you started doing shit back then when they were still screaming, you were stepping on the rest of your shit. Now they just go, this is awesome, and then they try to tell jokes.
Now they don't scream, they chant.
Yeah. And here we go. We'll find a crack in this armor. Look, double top wrist lock. And oh my God, the strength of him and a double clothesline. Boom. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to roll out and regroup. But wait, there's Bobby on the floor and Animal gives him an elbow. Dennis slides out. I'm melting. The frustration of the whole thing is what, look at the girls back there waving at the camera. They're loving this because the heels are frustrated. These people hate us. They wanted to kill us. Raleigh, this same building is where Piper switched babyface to Carolinas because a fucking guy one of the fans caught him in the stairwell and stabbed him. And they switched him babyface after that. He had too much heat. So they want us to be embarrassed. They're not worried about whether the Road Warriors are doing 175 moves as to whether the Road Warriors are going to embarrass us, beat us up, and win the World Tag title. And here we go. And Hawk, that press could fucking neuter you. Talk about spaying and neutering your pets. His right hand in the crotch. And here we go. And Bobby moves out of the way. And Hawk misses the dive and stops himself. Now, while the referee's backing him up, here comes the Midnight Express with the racket. And now we've cheated and gotten an advantage over Hawk. Now Animal's going to do whatever he can try to do to stop this, but Hawk is the legal man, and he's been compromised. And God, this wide shot. They were really proud of this crowd, but still, there we go. Dennis, gouging the eyes, working on a face. Hawk's going to sell it. And that beautiful right hand of Bobby's, because also he would make it was an early version of leg slapping. He'd punch his fucking side and you would hear the smack. And I always love to watch Dennis get on somebody when the heat's going. See, he's still putting the guy over as far as his strength, being kicked out of the lateral press like that. But Dennis's movements are so sharp, the punches, the kicks, the thrust to the throat. Not a lot of wasted motion. He's always in the right place. And if somebody makes a mistake around him, he just kind of holds up a step and doesn't fucking get into it. Dennis was always in the right place at the right time.
That was interesting. Bobby going for the eye there.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Other people just gouged that. Bobby would actually show you the finger that was going into it. I think, did I just give him a shot with the racket there? No, I'm about to again. Boom. Because I saw the referee turning around and Dennis wasn't going to have time.
Yeah, it's definitely hot in there. I just saw a fan fanning himself off with his program.
Yeah, no, well, look at my hair, for fuck's sake. And then boom. That was supposed to be a double knockout, but Hawk didn't quite get the message, but still he's going to make what passes for the Road Warriors as a hot tag. That was about as much rolling and ducking as you were going to get. Here comes Animal. And the comebacks are always fire, power slams, drop kicks, and then the flying shoulder tackle, which is always called the flying dingbat, for the reasons that we mentioned on last week's program. Dingbat! Look at Bobby's bump and just unconscious. Dennis comes in and makes a save with a kick to the head. Here comes Hawk. Now the referee's distracted. We're going to do a thing here in a second where Animal goes for the press, but I whack him with the racket. Boom! Down he goes, but Tommy Young turned and saw me. Disqualification. Shit, Ellering's coming after me. Ellering's going to chase me around the ring. Baby Doll is supposed to come and catch me at the corner of the ring, but as we've mentioned, it was a long way from the locker room. She's late, so I'm going around again, trying to get around this mess. Paul on my tail. Here comes Baby Doll. And my brains explode. Bubba doesn't know what to do. He's only been there for 6 weeks.
How hard did she hit you?
Harder than any man has ever. She was rushing because she knew she'd been late. I saw her coming and I turned around so that I could back up on her, and I was going to turn to her so she could hit me, and she just ran in and punched the base of my spine. But anyway, we were disqualified. The World Tag Team title does not change hands. The Road Warriors looked like dominant beasts, as they always did, and we set the all-time gate record in the city of Raleigh, North Carolina on this particular evening. it was easy to work with these guys because they were so over. All you had to do was their stuff. And the only people that ever had trouble were people that didn't do that. But there you have it. I wish more of these, most of them were not taped or filmed because we never worked with them in a specific television match. It was always either a big house show or like this. There was a couple of times we crossed paths with them at TV tapings, and that was pretty much it as far as what was recorded. Comments or questions?
Well, there it is. Always fun to watch this era of Crockett Promotions. Hot crowds, good action. It's always good to hear you break it down. That baby doll punch to you. I've watched that thing so many times throughout the years.
I was like, a mark has snuck up and hit me with a chair.
She hit you like she had a purpose. Let me ask you this. The famous incident where the boys pulled a rib on you and you thought you were being arrested.
Yes.
And then you turned around and went completely off on her in front of everyone.
She knew it was a rib and she was laughing.
And I don't know if you want to repeat what you said to her that day, but was this before or after that?
I'm pretty sure it was very recently afterwards. Now that I thought she was just running up there and punching me because she was panicked. Now I know she was getting a receipt. She was getting me back. Yes, because that was after a match with Dusty and Magnum that we probably had in Charlotte. We probably had in like May-ish, and they did it a couple weeks later where they arrested me for the assault on the police officer, which I'd only kicked the police officer because the guy that had jumped me was covered up with police officers, and I was trying to get him. And they served a fake warrant on me in Spartanburg, and were going to take me out to the car, and she started snickering. And I feel so bad about the things that I said about her and her appearance in the midst of all that. But I was under duress. She got me back.
Yeah, I'm watching a replay. I still have the video going. I'm watching her clobber you again.
Maybe that's what's wrong with me to this day. Songs? Do we have songs?
We have a few songs. Let's get a couple.
Song.
But with that, the drive-thru has closed. I got the big kalimba today. Thank you very much.
It's a big pop from me for closing today.
As we close things up, real quick, a very special happy birthday greeting to a good friend of the show, Aiden Heckle.
Aiden Heckle. He is supposedly the son of Travis Bickle. I'm not sure whether they've ever done that blood work or not. Aiden's very talented. He doesn't take after his dad. He's very talented, but happy birthday, Aiden.
Aiden turns 18. You know what that means? Aiden, you can now be arrested. Happy
Wait
birthday.
a minute. I was going to go somewhere else with that, but probably someplace that Travis wouldn't want me to go, so I shall remain silent.
Well, on that note, as we wrap things up, I want to remind you, you can hear...
You can be arrested when you're younger than 18.
Well, now he could be arrested in the big boy jail. Hopefully,
Bobby,
by the way, he's not going to be arrested. He's a good kid.
Well, he's a fine kid. He uses his left and right turn indicators. Bobby Eaton's daughter, Taryn, got a traffic ticket when she was 2.5.
Okay, would you like to explain?
Oh, well, only if you want me to. They left the car unlocked, and it was parked on the street out in front of the house, but the street slanted. And the kids were playing, and she got in the car and knocked it into drive, and it started creeping and went down the hill and ran right into the side of Arn Anderson's garage. And they had to call the cops for an accident report because there was damage and everything. And the driver of the car, Taryn Eaton, age 2.5. It can be done.
I hope they framed that citation.
Well, that wouldn't be the first Eaton that's ever been framed. Finish your fucking clothes.
Well,
here.
Anyway, of course, you can hear the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts on Friday, wherever you find your favorite podcast. And we'll be back again next Monday with the Drive-Thru.
No, wait. This week, the Experience will be out on Saturday.
Oh.
Because remember, we discussed this.
That's right.
For reasons of my personal scheduling.
So once again,
but also this show comes out on Tuesday, So the experience instead of Friday will come out Saturday.
As I was saying, the experience comes out Saturday this week.
Yeah.
And then back to Monday next week for the Drive-Thru, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Of course, you can hear classic episodes of the Drive-Thru and the Experience by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Cornette. For only $5 a month, you get access to the archives of the Experience and the Drive-Thru from the very beginning in 2013 up until 2015, with new episodes added each and every Sunday evening. Patreon.com/Cornette.
We get into 2016, shit's going to hit the fan.
Oh boy, will it. Of course, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel, tinyurl.com/official corny YouTube, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette for clips of shows, full episodes, as well as omnibus collections, all with the amazing Travis Heckel artwork, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com, about to open back up. Flood that store. Buy everything you can get your hands on. No?
Well, I'm not going to argue if you're going to go that far with it.
T-shirts, DVDs, face masks, as well as restraining orders. I can't even go from face masks to restraining orders without laughing. As well as restraining orders, certificates.
We got a lot of stuff that you can be on the shady side of the law involved in this.
Don't forget, Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Saturday on The Experience, and next week right back here on the Drive-Thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!